Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. I have infinite devil fruit ability. Chapter 41. Wisps of fish belly white gradually rose slowly, and the calm water was filled with a faint white mist. Boom. Suddenly, there was a loud noise, and a huge sea water burst out, and a small boat rushed out of the bottom of the sea, wrapped in colorful bubbles. It's finally out, quote. And Fan put on his black hat. His eyes did not show a trace of emotion, and looked at the calm sea scattered with sea fog around him. It's so unfair, why are we two of us in the boat? Sweating profusely, Namur looked at Fan, who was wearing a new black suit, a black hat, and a knife hanging from his waist, looking cold and extraordinary. What, you two have an opinion? Fan looked indifferently. No. Namur was surprised by Fan's eyes without a trace of water ripples, and laughed again and again. We've been in control since we came, haha. Azang, do you say that? Said to Azang without smiling. Yes. Yi Zhang nodded weakly, looking at Fan's eyes with some fear. The clothes on his body have been changed to another set now, and the lipstick is not worn off. He was repaired by Fan before. Do you know where this place is? Fan asked. He now understood where he was in the new world. Fortunately, this way, SF Express did not encounter the bloody undersea white dragon and then rolled to an inexplicable and wonderful place. It's hard to say that the place that appears at sea after going from Fishman Island to the new world is always different. Izo said, standing up and scanning the sea around him. Then let's go to the nearest island to find out the situation. Fan frowned slightly. You use no pointer to see where the nearest island is. Quote. Yi Zhang touched his whole body, and his face suddenly froze. What's wrong? Fan squinted at Yi Zhang, and he suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. My pointer is in my clothes, and I lost them. I think you can go eat Shang. Fan's face was pale. The pointer strap was worn on his hand, and he actually put it in his clothes. What kind of IQ is this? There's a pirate group. They're coming at us. Quote. Fan's eyes, who were about to throw Jizo into the sea, suddenly lit up, and his eyes looked in the direction of Namur. And sure enough, a large pirate ship with a pirate flag appeared, but there was too much sea fog, and the flag of the pirate ship could not be seen. They are coming towards us, and you are hastening towards him. Fan's eyes flashed with excitement, and when he caught this pirate group, he knew where this place was. Something doesn't seem right, Izo muttered as he frowned at the pirate ship that was speeding towards them in front of him. This ship is hung with Daddy's flag. Ordinary pirates don't dare to pay attention to us at all. Even those powerful pirates are a little afraid of it. Walking around the road, why does this pirate ship see us but speed up towards us? Yi Zhang clenched his guns and said solemnly. When Namur heard Azang's words, he looked a little nervous. After all, they are just a little bit now, and they are not yet the captain-level figures who will be famous in the future. As the two sides got closer and closer, the pirate ship finally revealed his true face. The hull was huge and comparable to the warship of the Navy headquarters, and the double windows were open with black holes dozens of meters, full of cannons, especially the fluttering flag, and the pupils of Yi Zhang and Namur shrank instantly. Fan's eyes narrowed. This pirate ship has two flags, and Fan is unfamiliar with the flag below, just a skull with two swords diagonally on both sides. But the one above, as long as an ordinary person can know, is that the background of this flag is a ship's rudder, followed by a skull with yellow hair around it, exuding a thick bloody and powerful aura. Flying pirates, Golden Lion. Fan muttered, his eyes narrowed as he spoke, and his body exuded a dangerous aura. Golden Lion, the super strong man on the same level as Whitebeard and Roger. But isn't the Golden Lion's base camp an island? And floating in the sky, what? It's actually the first vassal pirates of the Sky Pirates, the Art Pirates, the Twin Blades Spike, and that pervert. Exclaimed Izo, who seemed to know something. Let's hurry up, Namur shouted in panic. They wanted to leave before, but because of their father's face, they held on until now, but they didn't expect to encounter the subordinate forces of the pirate group with the same name as their father, and they were unlucky to encounter this perversion. Why are you in such a hurry? At this moment, a rather gloomy but sneering voice sounded. When I looked up, I saw a middle-aged man wearing a white trench coat, wearing black clothes, with a hideous centipede scar on his face, and a sinister smile on the corner of his mouth, standing on the side of the boat and looking at them. Brother of the Whitebeard pirates, here, come up and sit down. Spike smiled and beckoned. Namur and Azang had cold sweat on their foreheads, and they couldn't help but shudder at the thought of this person. No, Daddy's birthday is coming, and we're looking for a gift for Daddy, so we won't go up and do it. Azang shouted. Whitebeard's birthday. You guys are looking for gifts for him, what a group of filial sons. Spike was slightly stunned, then smiled. Our boss Golden Lion also has a gift for Whitebeard, you can come up and get it. Quote. Seeing that the people below didn't move, Spike sneered, why, don't you dare to come up? What a bunch of useless cowards. Haha, Whitebeard is such a timid son. Quote. And Fan quietly watched as he mocked Pike and pretended to be X. Go up, and Fan said to the two of them. If you go up, you may not be able to get down. Yizang looked at Fan in horror and said. Something that doesn't make a living, what are you afraid of? Quote. For the cowardice and stupidity of the two, Fan hated iron and could not be strong. If he was whitebearded, he would directly throw them into the sea to feed the sea kings, which would simply ruin his reputation outside. No matter how they reacted, Fan directly grabbed their shoulders with both hands and threw them directly into the double-knife pirate ship, and then an afterimage of a person also appeared on the side of the ship, standing on the railing. Huh, Fan frowned when he saw the scene inside the twin-blade pirate ship. Here, the two of them looked at the skulls scattered everywhere all over the boat in horror, and suddenly felt the chi and blood in their bodies rise wildly, rushing directly into their brains, and they were frightened and fainted. Oh, I'm sorry I scared Whitebeard's two sons out. Spike smiled apologetically. Haha, quote. The hundreds of members of the twin-blade pirates on the ship suddenly laughed, and looked at the fainting two of them with mocking expressions. Fan pressed his hat and blocked his face. Of course, he wasn't angry at the nearly 1,000 skulls on the double-knife pirate ship, he himself was murderous, he was not qualified to be angry. He did it just to show that he didn't know the two of them. These two are completely disgraceful existences, and it is really hard to believe that they will be the captains of Whitebeard in the future. Gee, there's a Whitebeard boy here who hasn't fainted, and that's really good. Spike looks at Anfin, I have a, here. Before he finished speaking, Fan waved his hand indifferently and stopped. Pay attention, I am not the son of Whitebeard. Quote. You're not Whitebeard's son, so why are you on the boat of these two sons? Spike looked at Anfin in surprise, and then suddenly realized, and said with a face full of indignation, these two guys dare to kidnap a child, Whitebeard's son is really too hateful. Quote. Come on, kill this guy, cut off their heads and give them to Whitebeard, how can he have such a son? Spike said angrily. Good. Several pirates with bloodthirsty eyes pounced on the two with knives like tigers and wolves. Fan was tasteless, and with a flick of his fingers, the heads of the pirates suddenly burst open like watermelons, and the brains sprinkled directly on the faces of the fainting two, directly waking them up. This is. The two wiped the things on their faces, and when they reached out, their chi and blood suddenly rose wildly, and they fainted. Have you made enough trouble? Anfin looked at Spike with a blank face. Just pretend to be like a little bit, don't pretend to be so funny, you look like a clown. Quote. You found out. Spike has a funny smile on his brows. Fan, the son of Sin with a bounty of 10 has been missing for half a year, and the world thought he was dead, but he didn't expect to be alive. Spike's expression suddenly changes back to his gloomy form. You know what, from the time I saw your first bounty, I wanted to keep your 10 head, because your grim expression was so cool, and now that I've met it, it's really amazing, I can finally see your skull, and the expression is so cold. Spike said with a frantic expression, and his face was twisted. Neurotic, said Anfin coldly. You can't call me that, I'm an artist, you know. I made my sister a beautiful artist when I was 3 years old, and my father into an eternal, when I was 5 years old, Spike muttered with a look of nostalgia. Before the words were finished, Fan couldn't listen anymore, this person was completely distorted and couldn't stay, and the surrounding pirates couldn't stay, and the influence of these people in this metamorphosis had also been distorted. Fan's psychic ability seemed to detect something, his face was full of anger, and Shang's mouth breathing was very rapid. If you want to be an artist, then go with your loved ones. Fan's violent eyes looked at the pirates around him, this group of pirates was no longer human. Kill us, do you know that we are subordinates of the great Golden Lion? Kill me, and you will be avenged by us, and you will kill your whole family, you know. Spike's eyes widened and he said in a sinister voice, "And if you want to kill us, although your 10E bounty is second only to Whitebeard, I don't think that strength is tied to bounty, otherwise there wouldn't be so much garbage in the world, let alone a 10-year-old imp." Quote. "So you'd better be my art." Quote. "Can I kill you, won't I know later?" And Fan said coldly, and the second-generation ghost in his hand slowly pulled out. Looking at the second-generation ghost in Anfin's hands, Spike's eyes lit up. "It's a good knife, and after I kill you, I'll use him to make you art." Quote. "You're the first person I've been angry with in half a year, you're good, I'm going to tear you to shreds." And Fan's pupils shrank and said, he was extremely angry in his heart. "Kill him for me." Spike snapped to the left and right. "Kill this kid." Quote. "Tear him to shreds." Quote. Suddenly, the nearest pirate opened his eyes angrily, shouted, and swept out with a steel broadsword in his hand. Boom! A heavy crash. The planks were stained with blood, the pirates' limbs were broken, and blood rolled out, and their eyes still kept their eyes open, but they were full of powerlessness at this time, and then their eyelids slowly drooped. Died, and a pirate was directly killed with a single sword, cutting it in half. "Just you garbage want to kill me?" And Fan said in a cold voice with a hideous expression, his voice like thunder. "You all come with me." Spike frowned and shouted. Immediately, all the pirates got the order, their expressions were extremely hideous, they took out their weapons, and pounced on Fan with a brush, their eyes were turbulent, and they had a feeling of not being afraid of death. Ah! A scream. A person's body suddenly flew up, he was driven by telekinesis, and directly hit the railing of the boat, his head broke and blood flowed, and his whole body spasmed a few times, and then he remained motionless. HMPH. Quote. And Fan snorted coldly, waved his hand, and a hand knife was swung out, and the three pirates were immediately beheaded by the horror, and all kinds of intestines were exposed, which was extremely bloody and terrifying. Spike's eyes widened as he looked at Anfin, who was like a chicken and a dog, how could he? Surprised. And Fan looked at Spike coldly, and said coldly, "Didn't you say I couldn't kill you?" Quote. Speaking of the back, the terrifying murderous aura on his body swept up, and the indifferent white mist around him was slightly reddened, but I could think of how much the anger in Fan's heart burned. Looking at the pirates around him who were frightened off by his ruthless methods, Fan smiled coldly, "What's the matter? You are scared, you have the consciousness of death after killing your own beloved relatives, you beasts." Quote. Yes, and Fan just used his psychic ability to detect some thoughts in their hearts, and he was shocked to find that after these guys joined this pirate group, they all brutally killed their wives, daughters, relatives and children, all exterminated their humanity, although I don't know why, but this act of exterminating humanity made Fan extremely angry. As long as it's personal, it's going to be angry. The anger in Fan's heart became more and more intense, and he felt extremely ironic when he looked at the pirates who were starting to be a little frightened. What was the reaction of these guys to seeing their painful and fearful expressions when they killed their relatives? "You scum, no, you brutes, you will use your blood to appease your own sins." And Fan said with cold eyes. "What are you doing?" Spike shouted angrily as he looked at his retreating men. Yes. Quote. The fear on the faces of these pirates suddenly vanished, and they returned to their previous hideous bloodthirstiness. Kill. Those pirates had red eyes one by one, their whole body strength was extracted, and they were carrying heavy knives in their hands, and they attacked Fan fiercely. Fan's eyes flashed with a heavy murderous intent, he stepped forward with an arrow, and the second-generation ghost in his hand swung throughout, casting countless swords, and twisted towards those attacking pirates. Poof. Quote. Flesh splattered, and scarlet blood and flesh blurred the pirate ship. The range of this move was extremely large, and more than 50 pirates were directly wiped into blood, which was worse than dead corpses. Seeing Anfin kill his subordinates like chopping melons and vegetables, Spike's eyes flashed with fear. He didn't expect this boy to be so terrifying, his tough subordinates turned out to be scum. No, if this continues, my subordinates will be killed, and then my hard work will be in vain. Quote. Spike's eyes flickered with a fierce glint as he slashed out with the twin knives at his waist at an extremely fast speed, like a flash of light. This move is Spike's strongest attack, which uses absolute speed as a basis to kill others in an instant. At the moment when Spike made a move, the sneer in Anfin's eyes flashed, his psychic power covered the entire pirate ship, and he knew everything he did. Poof. Quote. The sword flashed, and blood splattered. And Fan's figure was like an afterimage, and with a turn of the blade, the speed was faster than Spike's, and he directly cut off his arm with a knife, and then kicked it away. Just because you, an ant, still want to kill me, it's just a fool's dream. And Fan sneered and said, from the moment he got his strength was already terrifying to the extreme, and it was ridiculous that there were always some stupid people who despised his age, and in the end, most of them fell into the sword. How could you? How could you? Quote, Spike was covered in blood, constantly retreating, his face pale and frightened to look at Anfin, who was also covered in blood. On the double knife pirate ship, the White Skull had been stained red with blood, and the pirate ship was already red at this time. All the pirates were killed in half by the terrible boy in front of them. More than 300 loyal subordinates were all killed. Even he was hit so hard that he cut off an arm. How is it impossible? And Fan wiped the blood on the body of the second-generation ghost knife, looked at him fiercely, and roared angrily, your filthy blood has defiled my knife. Quote, you can't kill me, I'm a scientist under the Golden Lion, research something, you can't kill me, otherwise the research will be broken, and the Golden Lion will tear you to pieces. Spike exclaimed. Scientist. And Fan's eyes were violent, and he said in a cold voice, what are you studying? Don't kill me. Spike screams, drive indigo, you know, he's a drug that studies the evolution of monsters' combat power, and I study human. Before he could finish speaking, a flash of silver light flashed, and Spike's throat was slit, and the blood gushed wildly, like a fountain, and he died with a look of disbelief. What people? And Fan glared fiercely, kicked with one foot, jumped up, and slashed out the second-generation ghost in his hand. Boom. Quote, the sea exploded into waves, followed by a stream of scarlet blood scattered in the water. And Fan landed on the railing of the boat and looked at it with a gloomy and uncertain expression. Someone had evaded his psychic probe and escaped with his powerful blow. And Fan squinted his eyes slightly, and muttered, is it the Golden Lion's man? He took out a map from the cabin, looked at the markings on it, frowned slightly, and muttered. Whitebeard's territory. And Fan looked at the imprint of a white-bearded skull painted on the Sicilian Sea, and was slightly stunned, and then understood something. This guy dares to break into Whitebeard's territory, this is looking for death. And Fan said lightly. This guy's disgusting pervertedness, if it is discovered by Whitebeard, he will definitely be killed to scum. And Fan looked at the two Azang who fell to the ground unconscious, kicked them with his foot, and kicked something directly into their faces. Oops. Quote, with a painful groan, the two of them were directly awakened by the severe pain on their faces. They opened their eyes in a daze, and their confused eyes saw the blood of the stumps all over the ground. Their eyes instantly widened, and the chi and blood in their whole bodies rose wildly, and they rolled their eyes, as if they were about to fall into a coma again. You two cowards, what? Are you going to sleep with a bunch of corpses? And Fan said coldly. The two of them suddenly stood up, shook their heads in unison, and looked at Fan with very frightened eyes. It can be seen from the blood all over Fan's body that he killed all the corpses in this boat. And Fan ignored their panic, just took the map and said, this place is the Sicilian Sea, the territory of your father Whitebeard, you should be familiar with it. Quote, Sicilian Seas. The two exclaimed in surprise with their eyes lit up. Well, that's the pointer. Anfin tossed the pointer from the cabin to Izo, look where the nearest island is. Quote, the nearest island here is more than 100 nautical miles, which is a bit far away. Izo took the map and pointer, kept comparing them, and then said slowly. Yes, 100 nautical miles, that's 185,200 meters. It's closer on land, but it's a little farther away from the sea. Anfin pondered, how long will it take for us to arrive? Quote, with this ship, it is, probably. Before Azang could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Fan. This ship is so dirty, it will be sunk later, and it turns out that our little boat. Fan said impatiently, looking at the red-stained skulls and corpses all over the deck, he felt a pang of disgust. Azang was slightly stunned, then came back to his senses and said, with our small boat, it will take about 10 hours. Quote, 10 hours, Anfin muttered, and he waved his hand, let's go back to the boat. Quote, what are you looking at? When Fan was about to return to the ship, he suddenly found Namuel standing on the edge of the other boat, holding a bloody telescope and looking ahead, not knowing what to look at again. I spotted a huge ship coming towards us. That is the case. What? Quote. Yizang and Anfin were taken aback. And Fan rushed over and snatched the telescope from Nemours' hand, and when he looked at it, he found that there was a huge ship sailing over, and that ship was even bigger than this ship. His heart was extremely sensitive, and he sensed a strong aura from afar, and there were many strong people hidden in it, and there was an even more terrifying aura, which was not as good as this one. The strength is far above me. And Fan's expression became serious, and he actually felt the aura of danger. Is it the four emperors? No, the four emperors have not yet been divided. Withdraw, we can't afford to mess with it. And Fan said to Namu and Yizang, he is a person of interest, and he will try to avoid those he knows that he can't provoke. After all, heroes don't eat immediate losses. Wait, this ship is somewhat familiar. Quote, Nemours muttered. It's Daddy's ship, Nemours said slowly, and Fan was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and his eyes widened. Whitebeard. This is Daddy's territory. Daddy's ship often patrols back and forth on his own territory to prevent some guys from harming his territory, but I didn't expect us to be so lucky to run into Daddy. Is there a real Daddy's ship? Exclaimed Zhang in surprise. There's an 80% chance it's a Daddy ship. Nemours nodded in affirmation. It's really good. Quote, and Fan stared blankly ahead, and it took him a long time to come back to his senses, and he suddenly felt so bloody. How could he encounter a pervert and then meet Whitebeard? This is unreasonable. As time passed, a huge ship with a white whale appeared. The pirate flag fluttering on the ship is a skeleton with a white beard, and behind it is a large cross-legged bone, indicating that the owner of this ship is the Whitebeard pirates. Daddy, it's really Daddy. Namuel cried tears of joy. The journey was really too dangerous. First met an unusually terrifying bear child, and then met Spike, a pervert, who almost thought he was going to be finished, but fortunately it was a blessing in disguise. It's really Whitebeard. And Fan was a little shocked, and then his face showed a look of jealousy. He was very jealous of the strongest man in the world, especially at this time. Whitebeard was at his peak, and he could be said to be the strongest man worthy of the name. Spike. At this time, an unusually angry and powerful voice came. You're really daring. Research human experiments, trying to come up with some human evolution drugs, and as a result, some people will become crazy people who are not ghosts and ghosts, and you can do this, but you are so bold that you actually hit my territory, and people from a village on my territory used it for experiments, resulting in the tragic death of the whole village. Quote, now I still want to pay attention to the fishmen on Fishman Island who are protected by me. Do you know that you are looking for death? Don't think that I dare not kill you if I have the golden lion as your umbrella. Tell you, even if the golden lion comes and stands in front of me, I will kill him. This fool, he is still so ambitious, he wants to conquer the world. Give me his dog dream. The voice was full of violent murderous aura, eager to be executed, and as the sound spread, the calm sea around him began to rage, and the waves and storms blew, and the pirate ship wherein Fan was toppled and tilted. You scumbag, give me death. Quote, standing on the bow of the ship, wearing a white coat resembling a navy cloak, holding a large knife in his hand, and his pupils shrunk, he roared angrily. Daddy, it's us. Quote, the two of them looked at the angry Whitebeard in the distance, and suddenly shouted in shock. Unfortunately, the storm that gradually blew the waves around them made their voices impossible to reach Whitebeard's ears. No need to shout, he can't hear it. Quote, and Fan's eyes were cold, looking at the Whitebeard in front of him, as if he was standing up to the sky. But, what else did they have to say? And Fan directly knocked them unconscious with two swords without hesitation. Then, and Fan's eyes burned and looked at Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. I want to see how powerful your fists are. And Fan looked at Whitebeard excitedly. A thing called competition was ignited in his bones. He knew the gap between himself and Whitebeard, but he still wanted to fight the strongest man in the world. Especially the Whitebeard who is at the peak of his golden peak. If he doesn't challenge now, he may not have a chance in the future. The Whitebeard in the distance seemed to feel in Fan's fierce burning battle intent. His pupils shrank, and he sneered a little. This Spike scum actually wanted to challenge him. He really didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Challenge, just challenge with your life. Whitebeard's voice roared. As he spoke, the broadsword in his hand was raised high. Poh! There was a sound of space shattering, and an air pressure shield appeared on Whitebeard's broadsword, spreading large cracks in the air. Arrogance comes at a price. Whitebeard yelled. Boom. A powerful shock wave swept towards Fan, with an incomparable momentum, pressing towards Fan in the distance, and the seawater below actually collapsed under the influence. Feeling the terrible oppression, Fan's eyes suddenly narrowed. It was really not a white beard. Is this the combat power of the strongest man in the world? I'm not a vegetarian either, though. Fan smiled excitedly. The second-generation ghost in his hand, with a scarlet light on it, was extremely charming. A knife stream, a soul thirst to seal the demon slash. A huge blood-colored light slashed out in an instant, like a huge knife, blasting towards the rapid impact of the shockwave. Boom. Quote. As soon as the two collided, the huge energy exploded instantly, and the seawater below actually exploded into a sea crater, and a whirlpool of extremely fast motion was whirling inside. It's just an appetizer. Whitebeard smiled coldly, a little surprised that Spike was able to catch his move. This kind of garbage scum can actually catch his strength by 3 points. Pheasant crack. Adding the fruit ability to the slash of the broadsword, Whitebeard leapt with both feet after unleashing this attack, leaping into the air, his feet raging into the void, and running quickly towards Fan, whose speed was completely disproportionate to his size. Fan watched his pupils shrink, and said in surprise, "Is this a moon step?" Quote. Boom. At this moment, a slash rushed towards the passage of one side, and the space along the way was shattered, and the sea water was cut in half. Fangxing didn't have time to think about it. His brain was frantically calculating. He stepped on the air heavily, grabbed the unconscious Yizhang, and the two quickly dodged back, and when they broke away from the pirate ship, the slash came, and the entire pirate ship was cut in half, and then under the influence of the shock, it was shattered into several pieces. Boom. Quote. At this time, Whitebeard's huge figure appeared in Fan, and when he was about to cut it out, he saw in Fan's face, which contained soaring anger on his face, and was stunned for a moment, and the movements in his hand stopped, and the big knife was released in the void. Boom. On the entire surface of the sea, waves hundreds of meters high were stirred, and seeing this casual action startled a powerful impact, and Fan secretly gasped. The shock fruit is really powerful, and it really deserves to be evaluated as having the ability to destroy the world. Fan's heart was a little hot. If he had this shock fruit ability, his strength would at least leap forward. Fan, son of sin. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed, and he looked at Fan with some surprise. The strongest man in the world? Fan asked with a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth. Why are you here? Whitebeard frowned slightly. What about Spike, the scumbag, and the twin blade pirates? Aren't you down your feet? Whitebeard looked down, and sure enough, he saw a large number of stumps floating on the sea. You killed them all. These perverts, they don't have to die. Fan said coldly. It's not a pity to die. Whitebeard was slightly stunned, then laughed, and said with a full face, it's not a pity for these guys to die, it's good to kill, especially that Spike. This guy wants to study what drugs can instantly control the huge power of human evolution, and the pervert has brutally killed countless people, and now it's just right to die. Quote. This guy actually wants to catch the attention of the mermaids on Fishman Island, and I don't know where he heard that the blood of the royal mermaids on Fishman Island contains the blood of the sea god Poseidon, and he wants to go to Fishman Island to catch mermaids to study. If he doesn't die, I will definitely break him into pieces. Whitebeard said in disgust. Hearing what Whitebeard said, Fan was stunned for a moment, and his face immediately became gloomy. This guy is so daring. Fan said angrily, if he hadn't met this Spike, Fishman Island would probably suffer a huge disaster, and he could not care about the life or death of the fishman, but the royal family on Fishman Island had a life-saving grace for him. How could he tolerate others wantonly slaughtering his life-saving benefactor? Don't look at Spike being easily killed by him. This guy's strength is not bad, at least at the rank of lieutenant general. It can be seen from the flash of the fast knife, but it's a pity to meet him. These are your two sons. Fan threw the two people in his hand at Whitebeard, like garbage. Perhaps in his eyes, these two future captains were garbage. It's Namuel and Azog. I thought they were deserters. Whitebeard surprised the two who took it. They went to Fishman Island to make you a birthday cake, and I heard it was your 60th birthday. Quote. Fan looked at Whitebeard and said, he was a little surprised to hear that all of Whitebeard's sons were going to celebrate their father's birthday. After all, there are so many people in such a large scale, and a super pirate like Whitebeard, there will definitely be a large number of pirates going to visit him on his birthday. But if it is held every year, if you don't talk about what will happen to those pirates, Whitebeard may be bored. But when he later learned that it was Whitebeard's 60th birthday, and Fan figured it out, it turned out to be like this. Hee, do you want to give a gift to the old man? Whitebeard said with a smile. He was still quite curious about Fan, especially at the age of 10. He had such a powerful strength to destroy and advance the city's prison to the earth-shattering event. He was not only curious, how could people be so wicked? Isn't there still a month left on your birthday? And Fan said with a smile. He raised the second-generation ghost in his hand, and said, the strongest man in the world, the battle between us is not over yet. You have started a battle, you must have a beginning and an end, don't insult this name. Gulu, it's a man, and they all want to be the strongest man in the world. Quote, Gu la la la, if that's the case, then you can beat me. Defeat me, you are the strongest man in the world. Whitebeard laughed as he brandished his broadsword. And Fan roared, his hands were ghostly, and he slashed directly towards Whitebeard with a sword, and a cold red light tore through the space and slashed towards Whitebeard, and the murderous aura in it made people tremble. A knife flow, a bloody kill. Quote, Gu la la la, little ghost, you're too arrogant. Quote. Whitebeard laughed, and with a wave of the big knife in his hand, he drew a half arc of light with the power of shock, and directly crashed into the oncoming blood kill. Boom. Quote. This knife directly crushed the fierce blood killing, and the shock impact that erupted directly hit Fan. Poof. Quote. A trace of blood shook out of the corner of Fan's mouth, and at least 3 ribs were broken, and ordinary people estimated that he was directly seriously injured and fainted, but he didn't care. He had the ability to recover. What was this injury? He was seriously injured in the fight with the warring states, which was dozens of times more serious than this. And Whitebeard hasn't used all his strength. If he is so impotent, isn't this a slap in the face? He still wants to be the strongest man in the world, and if he can't stand this attack, he should go and eat poisoned milk powder. Whitebeard, are you giving me a massage? And Fan held the second-generation ghost Che in both hands, rushed towards Whitebeard, and shouted, a knife flow. Whitebeard looked up at Fan, only to see Fan in a straight line, rushing towards him quickly, like a sharp arrow out of the bow, the big knife in his hand clenched, ready to come with a powerful blow at any time. Suddenly, Fan's body leaked, and his left foot kicked in the void. Arashi, wind wheel. Quote, a vacuum slashed out, converging the surrounding air currents, gathering and spinning at high speed, shooting towards Whitebeard. What a cunning thing to do. But do you think you can attack me like this? Whitebeard said with a smile as he said with his hands in the shape of claws, pulling directly into the air. Boom. Fan suddenly felt that the left side of his body hit his body with thousands of pounds, and a mouthful of blood spurted out, and immediately smashed directly into the seawall that had already set off waves like a kite with a broken string. Ha, the Navy 6 is good. Quote, Whitebeard grabbed Fan with one hand and kicked out the land-foot wind wheel, looking at Fan in surprise as if he had hit a solid wall, and then fell to the sea level. As he spoke, he exerted a slight force in his hand, and the shock power directly shook the Lanjiao wind wheel. You're a compliment, but I'm not as good as you, and I'm walking in the air. Fan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his fingers suddenly shot furiously, and countless finger gun gas bullets shot at Whitebeard like a furious Gatling. What a terrible finger gun. Your finger gun is more powerful than mine, and if it hits me, I may not be able to stand it. Quote. Whitebeard held a large knife and said complimentally. Whitebeard looked at the air pressure in front of him that gathered like glass, densely packed with cracks, except for a few that began to explode. The rest were all driven into the cracks and disappeared without a trace. Naginata, god of war, little ghost, you're still far away. Quote. Whitebeard held his Naginata high, and the head of the Naginata was surrounded by a layer of milky white light, and when the light slowly turned from white to black, Whitebeard slashed down. Boom. With Fan as the central point, a crack was directly seen, and Fan fell directly. However, Fan's fall was not over. The rift was getting bigger and bigger, more and more uncontrollable, and the whole sea fell apart. It's really not a star or 2 points. Standing on the sea level, Fan looked up at Whitebeard, coughed up a mouthful of blood and said, the gap between him and these veteran super powerhouses is still really terrifying, and they can basically abuse him completely, which makes Fan feel a little sad. But thinking of his age, Fan was a little comforted, he still had a long life in the future. Goo la la la, little ghost, you're really anxious. How old are you now? I think when I was 10 years old, I was still fishing. Your current age is basically across the sea. On holidays, you can definitely surpass me. Whitebeard looked at Fan's wry smile and said with a laugh. Imp, come and be my son. Whitebeard suddenly laughed and said. His appreciation for Fan became heavier and heavier, and in his eyes, it seemed that he had seen the strongest person standing on the top of the world in the future. The strength is so terrifying at a young age, and the potential is extremely heavy. Hearing Whitebeard's words, Fan glanced at Whitebeard deeply. You're thinking too much, Whitebeard. Quote, how about a bet if I can beat you with one move, how about you being my son? If I can't beat you with one move, what do you want, how about I help you? Said Whitebeard. It's not fair, Fan said lightly, how terrifying Whitebeard's strength is. If he strikes with all his strength, there will be no scum left. Whitebeard grinned and said, but aren't you the ones who get the benefits? Hearing this, Fan's heart fluctuated a little. Indeed, it was him who got the benefits. And if he could get Whitebeard's help, he would get twice the result with half the effort in doing anything in the future. And with Whitebeard's short-term personality, coupled with his own growing strength, not many people in the world dare to touch him. It's just that there are things to be sacrificed, but in the long run, this little thing is nothing. On the contrary, he can gain great benefits. What's the matter? Whitebeard looked at Fan and smiled. He had already sensed Fan's heartbeat a little faster. It's impossible to be a dad. Of course, you can be my teacher. Fan shook his head. Whitebeard was stunned for a moment. Being a teacher. This was the first time he had heard of being a teacher. If you want to be my teacher, you can beat me in one move. Quote. Fan said sharply. That's good. Whitebeard smiled heartily. Being a teacher, interesting, teaching such a student, I don't know what to teach. Whitebeard held the naginata with both hands, and the upper part of the raised naginata was filled with a milky white light, and then slowly condensed. Boom. When condensing, the entire sea shook slightly, getting bigger and bigger, and the light became more and more condensed. And then finally, a spiderweb-like crack appeared in the air next to the light, and the crack became bigger and bigger, and he began to condense more than 5 layers of power. He wants to defeat Fan with one move, but also don't hurt Fan. Slowly, the Whitebeard starts from the top of the head and slowly grows larger. Naginata, splitting god slash. Whitebeard burst out and slashed at Fan. At this moment, Fan pointed with all his might. Finger guns, bazookas. Quote. Boom, quote. A slight collision sounded, followed by the explosion energy that rushed into the sky. Like thunder, countless waves rose wildly, and the raging sea seemed to be the end of the world. Fan spit out a mouthful of blood and flew out directly. His entire right hand was cracked like a knife being cut by countless knives, and strangely no blood flowed out. Bang, quote. Fan crashed into the sea. Whitebeard was also knocked away by this blow, gliding over the sea, and then thrust down with his broadsword, cutting out a terrifying and hideous seafront, and the huge impact was relieved and stopped. Poof, quote. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Whitebeard's mouth, and he shook his head a little and said with a wry smile, this little ghost, obviously he has already succumbed in his heart, but he still has to use all his strength so desperately, and as a result, he injured me. Quote. However, I like it, only in this way can you be worthy of being my disciple. Ku la la la, Whitebeard laughed. Whitebeard pirate ship. Brothers, let us welcome our new brothers. Whitebeard sat on the boat and shouted, holding the barrel and shouting. Phew, quote. The pirates on the ship also raised their wine glasses and shouted. Hello brothers. Fan, please take care of me. Fan held the wine glass, and I don't know why he always felt a little awkward. Teacher. Fan shouted at Whitebeard again. Ha ha, sons, it's time for a feast. Whitebeard laughed heartily. Daddy. The crowd said happily. Gollum la 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 la. Whitebeard laughed a few more times. He directly and violently pressed Fan's head, and said, don't underestimate him, he is the son of Sin with a reward of 10 and the reward amount is second only to Dad, but it is said that Fan is the son of Sin, so what am I? Quote. Whitebeard laughed again, full of joy in his laughter. All the pirates looked at Fan in surprise. Their eyes had all kinds of emotions, envy, jealousy, worship, etc. In short, this white-bearded pirate group may not have the same heart. After all, people's hearts are unpredictable, but for Whitebeard, they are still obedient, just like a son is obedient to his father. As for the brothers, there may be some secret competition with each other, but most of them compete for Whitebeard, just like a son gets the favor of his father. And Fan's psychic ability has already felt the changes in the hearts of these people. These guys. And Fan chuckled. Anfin, let me get to you, the captain of our Whitebeard pirate ship. Whitebeard said, we have a total of 16 squads in the Whitebeard pirates, and they are. Quote. Squad 1 Captain, Robbins. Squad 2 Captain, Martin. Squad 3 Captain, Diamond Joes. Squad 4 Captain, Thatch. Squad 5 Captain, Foil Beasta. Captain of the 6th Squad, Bramank. Captain of the 7th Squad, Rakyo. 8th Captain, Anthony. 9th Captain, Blenheim. Captain of the 10th Team, Khalil. 11th Captain, Jin Gudo. 12th Captain, Leander. Captain 13, Buffalo Artemis. Captain 14, Speedo Gear. 15th Captain, Fosa. Captain 16, Matthew. Whitebeard introduced in turn, and Fan found that most of the captains were almost the same as in the original book, and he felt a little surprised, but it was very reasonable to think about it carefully. These captains were the elite of the elite, and according to Whitebeard's character of not allowing anyone to hurt his son, he could figure it out. Seeing and Fan's thoughtful expression, Whitebeard laughed and said, "Gulala. Although your bounty is 10e, if you want to be the captain of the Whitebeard pirates, you must also establish merit first. Strength is not everything." Quote. How do you know I'm going to be a pirate? Asked Anfin to Whitebeard. Whitebeard's expression suddenly leaked. He looked at Anfin blankly, and then said, what? Listen to your tone, you don't want to be a pirate. Why, you plan to become a navy. Quote. Speaking of the back, Whitebeard began to be funny again, and the pirates around him laughed. And Fan's forehead was full of black lines and looked at the Whitebeard. Can this Whitebeard who is about to enter old age be calm? Where has the domineering spirit of the strongest man gone? Anfin, what is your dream? After laughing for a while, Whitebeard suddenly asked Anfin seriously. Dreams. Anfin was slightly stunned. Since he came to this One Piece world, he has no dreams, because his life is full of darkness, making people unable to see hope. If it weren't for the fate of fate, let him get infinite fruits. It is estimated that he is still being bullied by a group of noble scumbags at will. Whitebeard looked at Anfin stunned, and said very seriously, people live in the world, they have no dreams. What is the difference between them and corpses? It's just that you can walk the dead. Quote. No, I have dreams. Anfin suddenly burst out and retorted. Everyone was suppressed by Anfin. My dream is to kill Mary Hoya in the Holy Land, and slaughter all the people on it. Anfin said with blood-red eyes, those years of humiliation. It has been integrated into his bones. If there are still living people on it, he will be unwilling for the rest of his life, because he is a stingy ghost. He can't let go, he can't let go. Whitebeard looked at Anfin, who was extremely excited, and frowned slightly, so heavy that he was almost a god. He didn't know that Anfin was haunted in his childhood, but he would definitely see that Anfin must have experienced something before that made him so resentful of the world government. If you want to kill Mary Hoya in the Holy Land, you have to. Before Whitebeard's words were finished, Anfin took the lead and said in a cruel voice, if you want to overthrow the world government, you must overthrow the world government, you must overthrow the navy, and if you want to overthrow the navy, you must have strong people and forces. Quote. So I'm going to form a strong force to overthrow the sea ruled by the navy. Anfin said coldly, a fire burning in his heart. Its name was revenge and ambition. What if someone stops you? Whitebeard looked at Anfin, and after being silent for a long time, he asked slowly. Need you say that? Anfin's expression softened, and he chuckled. Anyone who dares to stop me, then kill, come and kill one by one, come and kill 2 pairs, if you come to 30 million, then kill 30 million. Quote. Whether it is the old, the weak, the women and children, or whatever, those who stand in my way are guilty, and the sin should be killed without forgiveness. Anfin's expression was cold, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. 2 ye is a sin, 2 won is a male, and if you slaughter 9 million, that is, you will be a male in the middle, so what about 30 million? Anfin said slowly. As soon as these words came out, there was silence. Quiet, 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 terrible. The surrounding pirates were shocked by Anfan's cold and murderous words. Tu Yi was a crime, Tu Wan was a male, and slaughtered 9 million, that is, the male of the male. No wonder people are called sons of sin at such a young age, with a reward of 10 E. Teacher, no matter what, you will help me. Anfan looked up at Whitebeard's complicated expression, shocked eyes, and said with a smile. There was silence on the ship, and the Whitebeard shook off from Anfan's blood-colored words. You are my student, of course I will help you in the future, Gulala. Whitebeard forced a smile, but this laughter was different from the previous one, full of mixed emotions. Thank you, teacher. Anfan smiled slightly, drank the beer in the wine glass in one gulp, and had a cold smile on the corner of his mouth. To overthrow the world government, it is necessary to overthrow the navy, and if you want to overthrow the navy, you must have strong men and forces. Forces. I don't know if the Magneto who was completely controlled by me escaped back then, and if he didn't, he would have died, but if he did, where would he be now? How big was the pirate group that was pulled up? I remember if I left him to form a force. The Holy Land of Mary Hoya, the headquarters building of the world government. The 5 old stars each sat on their own sofas, holding the coffee that spread throughout the house, and savored it. The long-haired 5 old stars looked at a document that looked like a secret letter in their hands, and their expressions were a little moved. What's wrong? Asked one of the 5 old stars indifferently. There was something that could make his expression change a little. And Fan appeared. Quote, Chong Juffa said with the secret letter in his hand. As soon as these words came out, the 5 old stars who were tasting the precious coffee paid by the Coffee Kingdom suddenly vented. This little brute isn't even dead. The coffee in the hands of the white-robed 5 old stars directly turned into a pile of powder, and there was a trace of anger on his face. He admired Anfan very much at the beginning, but he didn't expect this Anfan to disappoint him so much, the so-called deep love and deep hate. He's now on top of the Whitebeard pirates, and he's a student of Whitebeard. The eyes of the blonde 5 old stars scanned the secret letter above and read slowly. The white-robed 5 old stars, who just wanted to order Anfan to be exterminated at all costs, frowned. The Whitebeard who claims to be the strongest man in the world. That's right. Quote, the 5 old stars on crutches snorted coldly, that's really smart. Hide in Whitebeard's boat, but think that in this way, we can't help him. Traitor to this world government, this shame. Quote, the destruction of the city of Advance has brought the world government to shame the whole world, and the reconstruction of the city prison has cost huge financial resources and materials. If they catch Anfan, they will directly give Lin Kai-Ru death's order, and only in this way can they wash away the shame of their world government. Whitebeard will desperately protect no matter what. If the navy is sent to suppress it, it is estimated that there will be heavy casualties, and if this little beast does not die, the gain will outweigh the loss. The long-haired 5 old stars said lightly. The long-haired 5 old stars could see at a glance that he wanted to send the navy to persecute Whitebeard and ask Whitebeard to hand over Anfan. But is this possible? Very unrealistic. With Whitebeard's character, on the contrary, it may backfire. But is this little beast allowed to go unpunished? You must know that this guy's evil is very terrifying, especially since he has eaten the fruit of replication, and the potential is terrifying, and the longer it drags on, the greater the danger will be. The 5 old stars on crutches said very unwillingly. The blonde-haired 5 old stars sighed, and he said, this Anfan is really calculating. But we can't move, but there are some that we can. Quote, who, listening to the news from the Sky Pirates, that Anfan killed Spike, one of the 2 major scientists under the Golden Lion is now furious, and it can be expected that he will settle accounts with Anfan. HMPH, that guy with the Golden Lion, his ambition is still undiminished, and he wants to conquer the world, which is really ridiculous. A 5th elder star snorted heavily. I feel that although the Golden Lion is angry, but that guy is arrogant and will definitely not take action personally. Let him deal with the little beast at all. Let's let the Tianlong family take action. They have always hated Anfan, and Fan slaughtered their new generation. This revenge, they want to revenge in their dreams. Quote, if that's the case, we'll give them a chance, and hope they don't disappoint us. Quote, come on, go and bring the Robert Draco family. Call me. Quote, yes. Just when the 5 old stars were about to make a move on Anfan, at this time, on the other side of the world, a red storm that swept the world was quietly lit. On the sea, the wind and waves are calm, and there are two pirate ships floating on the sea, one large and one small, one of which collides with the other large one. On the large pirate ship, there are skeletal pirate flags fluttering and splattering with blood, and the pillars of the ship are even more scarlet. Do you want to surrender? Anfin lay on the bow of the ship, lazily smiling at the hundreds of pirates below who were dripping in cold sweat. The pirates looked at a huge bloody head at Anfan's feet in a cold sweat, which was the head of their captain. Our dad is Whitebeard, you're going to be punished like this, one of the pirates shouted. Before he finished speaking, Anfan waved his hand and swung out a slash of air, cutting the pirate directly and brutally, and the blood and internal organs flowed into the deck. When your knife is aimed at ordinary people, the teacher will not have a scumbag son like you. Anfan said impatiently, in a word, do you surrender or not? Leader, why are you talking so much? A man beside Anfan who was also dressed like a pirate looked at the child below with bloodthirsty eyes and said with a cruel smile. As soon as these words came out, more than 30 pirates around Anfan also nodded excitedly, like a demon. No, we are willing to surrender. Hundreds of pirates shouted in horror, although there were only more than 30 people on the other side, and there were 200 or 300 of them, they were no opponent at all. Especially the boy who seemed to be harmless to humans and animals, directly and violently killed the captain and dozens of his companions who killed them in one blow, and suppressed them on the spot. Well, if you surrender, just kneel. Quote, it's impossible, it's humiliating. Quote. Anfan's face instantly turned cold, and he said coldly, I feel humiliated, then you should die. Quote. After speaking, Anfan directly and violently used his telekinesis to control the pirates with very strong self-esteem and throw them into the sea outside, and at this moment, the sea water boomed, and a sea king shaped like a snake appeared and swallowed these pirates directly, and then jumped into the sea, and the exploding sea water directly drenched the pirates on a boat. The little snake is really naughty. Anfan wiped the water droplets on his hat and said indifferently. The pirates below looked at Anfan stupidly. Little snake, are you talking about the Sea King just now? Do you kneel? Anfan glanced at them, and said flatly, his head Sea King is indeed his pet, the body size is only a few hundred meters, it is an ordinary Sea King, he uses his mind ability to control, it belongs to permanent control. All the pirates shivered in this flat tone, and their legs weakened, and they fell to their knees. Looking at the pirates below who were kneeling on the deck in humiliation, the corners of Anfan's mouth hooked, revealing a smile, and the more than 30 fierce characters around him also showed a cold smile. Well, you let go of the mind and read things to me, if anyone dares not to let go of the mind, when it is over, you will be finished. Anfan shouted with a sneer. From now on, I pledge allegiance to the great leader Anfan, and swear by my soul. From now on, I pledge allegiance to the great leader Anfan, and swear by my soul. Quote. The world is full of swelling, sin, ugliness, death, inequality. Quote. The world is full of swelling, sin, ugliness, death, inequality. Our mission, to follow in the footsteps of our leaders, to overthrow this world and establish a new world order, regardless of the path ahead. Our mission, to follow in the footsteps of our leaders, to overthrow this world and establish a new world order, regardless of the path ahead. We are willing to shed blood and sacrifice, and anything that stands in our way is the evil of the world, and it must be eliminated and erased, at any cost, even if it costs with our lives. We are willing to shed blood and sacrifice, and anything that stands in our way is the evil of the world, and it must be eliminated and erased, at any cost, even if it costs with our lives. All for the world, for a new future. When we succeed, we will be immortal. Long live the First Empire of Shawu. Long live the First Empire of Shawu. All for the world, for a new future. When we succeed, we will be immortal. Long live the First Empire of Shawu. Long live the First Empire of Shawu. Anfan looked at the pirate below whose eyes were gradually becoming fanatical, and immediately grinned. He turned around and slowly walked to the side of the boat, looking at the blue sea. Close your eyes slightly, smell the sea breeze, and feel the vast sea with the power of your heart. Psychic control. It's too troublesome. Anfan thought of some things in his previous life, and thought of the terrifying Red Bear Empire in his previous life. He understood that the true meaning of the power of the heart was to influence, to break the resistance in their hearts, to establish the faith of the doctrine, and that they would always be loyal to their faith, and he was the faith. This is a red storm of One Piece. This is the real revolution, and this is the overthrow of the world government. And Fan gradually sneered. The first empire of Sha Wu. Sha, the first dynasty of the Celestial Empire, was called Great Sha Wu. This world needs to be conquered by force. It was at this moment that the countdown to the world government began. Because no one knows the terrible of the red power. The Whitebeard pirates. Whitebeard looked at the sea calmly, not knowing what he was thinking. Daddy, how can you tolerate this? And Fan? This guy doesn't know what he has done. He has recovered more than 30 pirates in a row, whether it is our vassals or whatever, he has recovered them all, and his courage is too great. Robbins, the leader of the first squad, came up to Whitebeard and said angrily. After this and Fan joined their Whitebeard pirates, he directly recruited more than 30 of their elites and then went to sea to recover the pirates. He didn't think so, but he didn't expect that in just half a month, and Fan's subordinates quickly accumulated more than 30,000 people, although he didn't know what the overall strength was, but with that kind of fanatical eyes, he could see how terrible this force would be. And this crazy speed of formation, it's terrible, it's terrible. In half a month, more than 30,000 people can be gathered, and they are absolutely loyal. What kind of concept is TMD? Let him do whatever he wants. Whitebeard said indifferently, this is his freedom. Quote. But he's using you, Daddy. This guy actually recovered the power of your vassals first, Daddy, your sons. Robbins was not reconciled, and what else was there to say? Whitebeard interrupted with a wave of his hand. When they use knives against ordinary people, they are not my sons. Quote. When did you become so timid? Quote. It's not important, it's mainly that this guy's theory is terrible. Robbins said anxiously. What Anfin said recently spread to the Whitebeard pirates, and many of the crew members had changed a little, although it was very slight, but he still caught it. If my sons are willing to take part in his so-called Red Storm, then go for it. Whitebeard laughed, but the smile was a little reluctant. Daddy, Robbins exclaimed, this guy is going to overthrow the world government, is Daddy going to go down? Whitebeard said, waving. Robbins was helpless and hated to leave. Whitebeard looked at the sea, suddenly frowned slightly, and muttered, Red Storm. Equals 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 equals. On a certain sea, dozens of large warships of various colors fluttering on a dark red background and printed with a black five-pointed star flag were moving slowly. This Robbins. Anfin frowned and looked at the information from the Whitebeard pirates in his hand, and snorted coldly, find a chance to get rid of him, I really thought I wouldn't dare to touch him. Quote. Yes. A pirate next to him saluted, probably because there was no uniform, this salute was too funny. And Fan took a deep breath, looked at a huge naval fortress painted with naval markings in front of him, and frowned suddenly. How did he come to the naval fortress? He still has to continue to subdue the pirates, because 30,000 pirates are too few, not enough. In the face of a powerful and well-trained navy, he needs a lot of cannon fodder, because there are too few core characters of the strong. What kind of fortress is that? Anfin asked, pointing to the naval fortress. Navy G1 branch, a pirate next to him said. And Fan was stunned for a moment. The G1 branch of the Navy is so familiar. Of course, it is not because this is the new naval headquarters in the future in the original book, but because it is. Who is the current admiral here? Asked Anfin with a frown. Vice Admiral Akainu Sakaski. Quote. And Fan was stunned, and then laughed a few times. I actually met Akainu. This guy hasn't gone back after being punished. It stands to reason that I betrayed the world government, and his punishment should be cancelled. Quote. Although Fan was a little puzzled, he quickly figured out what to do. The dog Red Inu, in addition to Dark Justice, is also a very strict dog, and he has to carry everything to the end. Very stubborn, he is a stubborn dog. It's not time yet, all the ships are turning around. Huh, did they find us? And Fan just wanted to say that he was retreating. After all, everything is now focused on the overall situation. Although he is cold-blooded and uses these 30,000 people as pawns, he will definitely not ignore 30,000 lives and squander them at will. Before he could finish speaking, more than 10 Navy sky blue warships appeared, and they were spotted and targeted. Who dares to swagger to appear in the naval fortress? Are you looking for death? A thick, angry, familiar voice rang out. I saw a middle-aged man wearing a navy trench coat and a suit on the bow of a warship in the middle, with black smoke all over his body, yelling with a gloomy face. How far do you think of me, Akainu? The middle-aged man roared. Actually drove so many pirate ships to his fortress, what do you want to attack? He has always attacked others, but now it's good that he actually took the initiative to attack the door. After so many days of not cleaning up these evils, can you stand on my head and pull the flight? Oh yes, Akainu, you're still so angry. Rest assured, I've always treated you as if you were a dog. And Fan's soft voice came faintly. In an instant, Akainu's face was violent, like black charcoal. This voice is so familiar. Suddenly, Akainu was shaken, and he thought of whom. It's you. Akainu gritted his teeth and said angrily. I finally met you. You really didn't die. I guessed that you would be in the new world, and after half a year of hard waiting, I finally arrived. Akainu roared angrily. No one will stop me from killing you. I'm going to tear you to pieces and feed you to the Sea Kings. Quote. For an Fan, there is a dead knot in Akainu's heart, which is a shame. Thinking of him as a dignified lieutenant general, the future general was humiliated by a hairy child again and again, and this humiliation made him unable to swallow this breath. It can be said that because of an Fan, he has not eaten or slept well in the past 6 months, especially when the news of an Fan's betrayal of the world government came. He was not happy at all. Because he may not have a chance to take revenge. But fortunately, he insisted on waiting for half a year, because he believed that he would meet an Fan one day. The new world is a big stage, the demons are dancing, and an Fan, the son of Sin, will definitely come here. Sure enough, when he arrived, he could use an Fan's blood to clear the depression in his heart. Akainu's face was full of hideousness. He tore an Fan to pieces, and then threw it in the sea. Feeling the monstrous hatred of the red dog, an Fan straightened his black hat. Yes, tear me to shreds, and I don't know if you've improved over the years. Quote. Hey, more than 30,000 people, although fanatical, are all a bunch of straw bales, and I don't know how many people will survive this war. Quote. But it doesn't matter, these guys are already extremely sinful, and if they die, they will be regarded as avenging those ordinary people, and they will also be regarded as contributing to the world. Quote. Shoot me and destroy them. Akainu roared at the people around him. Although there were only 10 warships on his side, Anfin had more than 30 warships on his side, 3 times as many as theirs. But he didn't pay attention to it. The cannons on their warships were not compared to the cannons on the pirate ships. The shelling distance was twice as long as theirs, and the power was very large, which was not comparable to ordinary pirate ships at all. If even pirates can't compare to them, are they still a navy? Are they still regular troops? Shelling. Quote. With an order, the cannons of the 10 warships were aligned, and the whole ship shook suddenly. Boom, boom. The dazzling yellow light and the loud sound of artillery shelling resounded in the sea like a thunderclap. Boom. A cannonball exploded next to an Fan's pirate ship, and the waves that exploded almost drenched an Fan. The enemy has already attacked, and you still don't backhand. An Fan said in a cold voice. Yes. The pirates nodded their heads and aimed their cannons at the navy. Boom, boom, boom. The shelling of the pirate ship also began to roar, and the black cannonballs hit the side of the navy warship directly, exploding into a wave of skyrocketing water. It may be the reason for the 2 leaders of the other side, Anfin and Akainu, that the 2 sides did not shell in place, but kept moving closer, and they both seemed to want to have a hand-to-hand fight. I was so unlucky to come across this wild dog. An Fan pressed the second-generation ghost on his waist and said with a sigh. Glancing at the face of the red dog that was gradually clear and smiling, An Fan was indifferent. He wanted to tear off this skin. You little brute, I finally met you again, this time without the protection of the 5 old stars. I will let you die without a place to bury. Akainu said with a sinister smile, feeling the blood in his whole body get excited. You think too highly of yourself, wild dog. Quote. An Fan said disdainfully, the last time the 2 of them singled out Akainu couldn't help him. If it weren't for the target Takela, he had to protect and be attacked, but this time, there was no one around him to let him have protection. Akainu wanted to take him down and do his spring and autumn dream. Hearing Fan call him a wild dog again, the red dog's face was bruised, his fists were clenched, and he looked at Fan with a look of resentment. Little brute, this time, I'm going to tear your mouth to shreds. Akainu gritted his teeth. Fan whistled and mocked. How many times is it? Akainu's face changed wildly in an instant, and he roared angrily, little beast, you. Meteor volcano. Quote. Akainu's right hand turned into a huge magma arm, looking at the sky and struck. The molten arm turned into countless volcanic bombs and hit Fan, covering the sky. Black smoke almost covered the entire sky, and the temperature boiled the entire sea water. Wild dogs, attacking so soon. Why do you want to kill us in seconds? Fan raised his head and sneered, you think too highly of yourself. Quote. After speaking, a red light flashed away, and countless volcanic bombs that flew from the extreme roar suddenly boomed, detonated and exploded, and all kinds of magma jetted like rain, falling into the sea water, making a boom sound. Fan took the second-generation ghost Che. His eyes were indifferent, and the corners of his mouth were cold and disdainful. Wild dog, what else do you use besides this trick? Quote. Akainu's eyes widened, his face was pale, and he almost wanted to swallow Fan alive. This move can be said to be his strongest move, but he didn't expect it to be solved so easily. In half a year, this Fan's strength is really not to say, it is really a demon. If Akainu knew that Fan's real cultivation time was only a month, he didn't know that he would have such a wonderful expression on his face. Akainu is full of jealousy of Fan. This Fan can be domineering, and it can be seen that Fan can hurt him in the last fight. At this time, poor Akainu still didn't know that Fan would not be domineering at all, and only use the means of telekinesis to hurt him, and this time to destroy him with one blow. The strongest attack was also destroyed by Fan using the strongest attack, not easily destroyed with a knife. If Akainu knew, I don't know how he would feel. It can be said that the red dog has always been played by Fan. I eat the best fruits of nature, how can a future admiral be inferior to you, little brute? As soon as Akainu was jealous in his heart, he was forcibly suppressed, and he was actually afraid. This is really unforgivable, unforgivable. How could he be afraid of a child in his teens? If this spreads, not to mention what will happen to his future admiral, it will be difficult for him to survive in the Navy from this shame, and he can commit suicide by jumping into the sea. I'm not even afraid of Whitebeard, am I still afraid of you, a little brute? Akainu roared. He had already received the news that Whitebeard was a teacher for Fan. He once had a dream in his heart, that is, to surpass Whitebeard, become the strongest man in the world, and spread absolute justice all over the world, but now he was afraid of Whitebeard's students. How could he talk about surpassing Whitebeard? Akainu used to see Fan as a stumbling block, and Whitebeard was a big mountain, but now it's okay, the stumbling block has become a high mountain, and it makes people fearful. How can this be tolerated? You must be a stumbling block to my Akainu, not a mountain of mine. Akainu slammed his right hand forward, and a huge magma rushed away, steaming viscous air, and the target was Fan, who was slowly approaching. Fan looked at each other coldly, and slowly grabbed out his left hand. Boom! A violent explosion rang out, and the bursting magma engulfed the ship's bow kick. Leader! All the pirates were shocked. Akainu was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said rampantly, you idiot, have you forgotten that magma is not to be touched, otherwise it will be melted into slag? Ha ha! You're thinking too much. Fan's calm voice came slowly. Suddenly, the red dog was like a duck with its neck pinched, and its eyes looked at Zero in disbelief. In an instant, the pupils shrank. At this time, Fan's whole body was boiling with red-hot magma, black smoke was billowing from his body, and his eyes were cold and he looked at the red dog. Magma fruit abilities. Quote. Akainu's pupils shrank, and he lost his voice. Magma fruit ability, when did you copy my ability? As soon as the words were finished, the red dog was slightly stunned, and the Holy Land Mary Joa. As a vice admiral, of course he knew that Fan had eaten the fruit of copying, and of course he was a little jealous, but then he was also cautious and vigilant, afraid that his ability would be copied. After all, his ability was still unique, but he forgot, he fought with Fan, shed a trace of blood, and his ability had already been copied, but he still forgot. Maybe at that time, I didn't dare to think that my ability had been copied, and I kept deceiving myself there. And today it was finally ruthlessly torn apart by Fan. Do you remember? Fan returned to his original state, chuckled, and looked at the red dog with contempt, high above, like looking down on an ant. Akainu looked at Anfan hatefully, and he said coldly, "Do you think that if you copy my ability, I will be afraid of you?" Although the ability has been copied, but Akainu still believes that he has an advantage. He has used magma fruit for more than 10 years, no one is more proficient in magma than him, and he understands magma better. Even if Anfan is a demon, it can't work. This is the accumulation of 000 years when needed. It's true that Anfan doesn't know much about the properties of magma as Akainu thinks, but don't forget, he doesn't use magma ability as his main attack. In Anfan's opinion, although the magma fruit is powerful, it can't compare to the burning fruit. As for why Ace died at the hands of Akainu, it is because Ace will not be domineering, plus to protect Luffy, he has to die if he doesn't die. Moreover, Anfan used the magma fruit just to be able to hit the red dog and injure him. You must know that he is not domineering. His domineering spirit hasn't awakened yet. Looking at the red dog, Anfan smiled coldly, and this wild dog game was excited. "Wild dog, you have attacked me so many times, is it my turn?" said Anfan violently. After speaking, without waiting for the red dog to react, Anfan pointed at the void. Finger guns, rock bullets. Quote, a burst of red blast energy burning with black smoke burst out at a speed like a flash of light, instantly piercing the void and coming to Akainu. Ha! Akainu glared, and his black-gloved hand slapped the pointer rock projectile that was trying to penetrate his body, and struck it in the left direction. "If you want to hurt me with this attack, you still have to dream," Akainu said with a sneer, and as soon as he finished speaking, a violent explosion sounded next to him, like a slap in his face. Boom! A warship beside Akainu exploded and slowly sank, and Akainu's face was difficult to see. Anfan whistled and shouted contemptuously, "It's really beautiful." Quote, "Ha ha." The pirates on Anfan's side also laughed, full of mockery. "Little brute, you deserve to die," Akainu roared angrily. "All the navies obey the order. Get close to these pirate ships, and kill all the evils on them. Kill them all," Akainu roared. These pirates actually dared to laugh at him. They are a bunch of garbage. What qualifications do they have to laugh at him? The bombardment of the sunken ship has now puzzled the anger in his heart, and he has to break them into thousands of pieces in order to calm the anger in his heart. The corners of Anfan's mouth hooked, and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and said, "We also lean on them. Use their blood to forge your immortality, for the great Sha Wu. Charge me, and wipe out all these evils that block our path. Obliterate, obliterate." The pirates erupted, feverishly raising the knife in their hands. Boom, boom, boom. As the shelling of the two sides finally stopped, 2 of the 10 warships of the Navy were sunk, 3 were injured in large and small ways, and more than 1,000 casualties were inflicted, and on the Anfan side, 35 pirate ships, 10 were sunk and 15 were injured, with at least more than 3,000 casualties. The difference between the two ratios is very large, and this is the difference between the elite regular navy and a group of minions who are forcibly gathered together. That's why Anfan has to subdue the pirates everywhere, and in the face of the attack of the lions, the wolves must be huge, so as to drown them. Boom! As the hull of the ship shook, the navy collided with the pirate ship. "These are pirates, they dare to take the initiative to attack our navy, they are really looking for death." Quote, "They are our enemies, we bury them and send them into the long river of history, all for the sake of the new world. Long live the first empire of Sha Wu, long live the leader. Kill." As soon as the pirates and the navy came into hand, they took their swords and fought against each other, and everywhere there were roars, swords clashing, and the sound of flesh fighting. As an important fortress in the New World, the navy stationed here is not as elite as the navy headquarters, but it is also experienced in 100 battles. Coupled with the strict character of Akainu, the combat effectiveness of the two is not much different, and even worse. Perhaps this is the reason why Akainu became the marshal in the original book, and the navy headquarters moved here, and it was a strong word from top to bottom. A bunch of garbage. Quote, using his experience, a naval soldier slashed down more than 4 pirates in a row, scanning the scarlet blood on the deck with a cold eye, chuckling with disdain. As soon as he finished speaking, several pirates stared at him, their faces fierce. This sin actually killed so many of us and killed him. Quote, immediately, more than 6 pirates rushed towards him with swords and wolves. A bunch of scum. The navy was disdainful, roared angrily, raised his knife and slew it, rushed over, and one of his heads was cut off, and then pounced on the other, which was extremely heroic. Poof. Quote, the Navy, who had just killed another pirate, felt tired and gasped, and suddenly, there was a pain in his abdomen, and a knife was inserted into his stomach, followed by a few more pains, and more than 5 pirates laughed fiercely, and pulled out the red knife at once, and blood and internal organs flowed all over the ground. Kill. The Navy fell to the ground with his eyes open, and after a few convulsions, he died without blinking his eyes, and he actually died like this, just because he was gasping. Countless corpses fell on the entire naval deck, a large amount of blood flowed, full of blood and terror, and the cold weapon battle was so cruel and terrifying. Chapter 51. For the fallen corpses around him, and Fan's eyes were calm and looked at the red dog, and there was no fluctuation of blood all over the ground, and the same was true for the red dog. In their eyes, these lives seemed to be not worth mentioning. The people on Anfin's side were already extremely sinful, and it was not a pity to die. And Akainu is a follower of dark justice, and in his opinion, the death of the Navy, everything is for justice, and it is worth it. Suddenly, Fan's eyes narrowed slightly, and a Navy soldier rushed towards him without knowing what to do. Fan smiled coldly, waved his hand casually, and a slash instantly cut several people in blood. Ha! At this moment, Akainu moved, his face was full of rage, his hands were raised, a punch erupted, billowing smoke rose into the sky, and the red viscous liquid fist flew towards Fan, not caring about the life or death of the people around him. Little brute, let me die. Quote, in his eyes, as long as he kills Fan, no matter what the cost, everything is worth it. Absolute dark justice. Wild dogs are really wild dogs, and they don't care about their own people. Fan casually glanced at the terrified Navy around him. These fools probably didn't understand why their commander attacked them regardless of the fact that they were here, which would injure them by mistake. Ha! Quote, Fan chuckled a few times, his eyes were sharp, and he stared coldly at the roaring magma fist. Boom! Just when the magma fist approached within 3 meters of Fan's feet suddenly dodged, as if the weight of 1,000 caddies, the deck under his feet instantly cracked, and the whole person was like a hungry tiger out of the cage in a rage, and he rushed straight towards the red dog, and the second-generation ghost in his hand cut the magma fist with an astonishing temperature in half with a straight edge, and directly violently cut the magma fist with an amazing temperature in half, blowing up a storm of blades, and slashing at the red dog. Phew. Quote, Fan appeared in front of Akainu and slashed at Akainu's neck with a sharp sword. It's so fast. Akainu's pupils shrank, and black smoke instantly rose from his left hand, and the magma boiled and grabbed the second-generation ghost, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. You want to kill me with this? After Akainu finished speaking, his face distorted, and his 2 eyeballs exploded in an instant. Fan actually let go of the second-generation ghost Toru, and his left fist struck hard, hitting Akainu's mouth. Poof. Quote, a mouthful of blood spat out of Akainu's mouth, and the whole person flew backwards like a kite that had lost its string. How is that possible? Lieutenant General Akainu is a natural ability, how could he be knocked away? That person has domineering. The surrounding navy fighting with the pirates was shocked by this scene, and they all shouted one after another. Long live the leader. Quote, unlike the navy, all the pirates shouted feverishly, and their morale was up. You little brute. The red dog crashed, fell down, coughed up a mouthful of blood, looked at Fan in disbelief. He didn't use domineering at all. Why? But when he saw Fan was stunned, he understood. At this time, black smoke was emitting from Fan's right hand, and the red arm in the black smoke was faintly visible. Akainu stared blankly. This little beast used the magma ability when he hit him just now, and the two are strong against each other, and there will be an injury. No wonder he can hit him elementalized. Hey, I'm not mistaken, that guy's arm is actually magma elemental. A Navy officer looked at Fan in disbelief. Are there 2 magma fruits in this world? This guy suddenly looks familiar. Quote, this guy is Anfin, the son of Sin, who destroyed the advanced city, betrayed the world government, and offered a reward of 10E. Suddenly, one of them screamed. Ha! All the navies exclaimed, looking at Anfin in horror. This son of Sin destroyed the advanced city, and after half a year, is he coming to destroy the G1 branch of the New World naval town? Thinking of this, all the navies were furious. This son of Sin must not destroy the G1 branch. A bloodied major general officer shouted angrily with a knife raised. My guess was correct, and Fan muttered. He thought that everyone had magma ability. If the two of them fought strongly, there would be a conflict. Sure enough, this punch hit the thought in Fan's heart. In addition to domineering, Halu Stone, and Shang Ke, it may also cause attack damage to the natural system in the same way. But this is still too troublesome, and it is convenient to be domineering. Thinking of domineering, Fan couldn't help frowning slightly. A strong spirit can ignite the domineering in his blood, but his spiritual power is so strong, he still can't ignite it, as if he doesn't have domineering. This shouldn't be. When is it okay to find Whitebeard to teach him? He is called Whitebeard teacher, and it is not called for nothing. Whitebeard must teach him something. 000. This son of sin must not destroy the G1 branch. A bloodied rear admiral officer raised his sword and shouted angrily, once destroyed, we will be a disgrace to the Navy. Quote. Yes, this son of sin must not be allowed to succeed. Quote. We will definitely not disgrace the Navy. Quote. All the Navy shouted angrily, very emotional, as if they had seen the fortress they were guarding being destroyed, and they had become a naval disgrace. And Fan looked at the emotional Major General at once, his eyes indifferent. The Major General was covered in blood, and his eyes looked at Fan coldly. Ha! Quote. The corners of Fan's mouth hooked, revealing a cold smile. Ants. Quote. After speaking, a surge of mental power struck the Major General in an instant, directly knocked off the boat, and fell into the sea. Major General. The Navy roared with blood-red eyes. Why are you stunned? Don't you kill me. Fan said coldly as he passed by the pirates. Yes. Quote. The pirate nodded abruptly, and pounced on the Navy with a hideous face. Kill these navies for me. Quote. Revenge for the Major General. The Navy also roared excitedly. The whole battlefield began to fight again, this time even crazier and more bloody than just now. Fan slowly walked towards the Red Dog, and the naval soldiers who defended the Red Dog and rushed towards him were directly cut in half by him. Get the. Quote. With a wave of the second-generation ghost, a rushing naval soldier was directly cut in half, scarlet blood sprayed on Fan's cheek. What faithfulness! Fan let out of his footsteps, wiped the hot blood on his cheek with his left hand, and his face was violent. These naval soldiers, I don't know what to do. There was a violent fluctuation in Shang, and his heart was extremely angry. Your subordinates are truly loyal. Fan walked to a distance of only 3 meters away from the Red Dog, condescendingly to the Red Dog who was covering his mouth, and said with a chuckle. Behind Fan, countless naval corpses fell, blood flowed all over the area, and 000 was flowing towards Akainu. Akainu's face was bruised, and he covered his mouth and forcibly stood up. He snorted coldly at Fan. Do you think this attack can hit me? After speaking, Akainu snorted, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and it seemed that he was seriously injured. Of course, Fan is aimed at the key point of the Red Dog, and he blows with all his strength, especially the magma against the magma, and the power can be equal to 1 + 1. Looking at the blood on the corner of the Red Dog's mouth, Fan chuckled, very much like mockery. Seeing Fan's sarcastic smile, Akainu was immediately furious, as if he had been greatly insulted, and he roared angrily, Little beast, do you think you can kill me like this? Quote. Ah! The Red Dog roared angrily, the whole person magma elementalized, the fists struggled like machine guns, the red magma fists erupted countless pieces, the momentum was huge and amazing, the surrounding air was viscous with the blazing breath, the deck burned flames, and all the surroundings burned, thick fire. Especially the raging magma, this area is like a fire. Ahem. Akainu coughed up a mouthful of blood, he was careless. Fan looked at the Red Dog indifferently, turning a blind eye to the magma bombs that were rushing in, and when he saw the Red Dog coughing up a mouthful of blood, the corners of his mouth suddenly hooked, and a cruel smile was wiped out. This Red Dog he expected to be very resistant to fighting, as can be seen from the original book when he was hit hard by Whitebeard and did not die. So he kept an eye on it, and even if he guessed, he had to hit Akainu's vital point, because once the guess was correct, it would be a heavy blow to Akainu. The result was as expected. Not only was it correct, but it hit the Red Dog hard. The last time I was almost killed, today feng shui. I don't know, you'd think I was almost killed. Fan laughed fiercely, his left fist was suddenly clenched, the air pressure mask appeared in his hand, and with a sudden flick, the gushing magma fist was directly shattered, and countless attacks were dissolved by him in this way. Akainu looked at Fan with a shocked face. Is that shock fruit ability? This little brute actually copied Whitebeard's abilities. And Fan looked at the shocked look of the red dog, and smiled indifferently. Are you surprised? Let's go to hell, and Fan said softly. As soon as he finished speaking, and Fan's face changed instantly, his entire right arm burned violently, and the killing intent on his body was boundless. Little brute, don't be complacent, I'll be waiting for you in hell. Akainu coughed up blood and said with resentment on his face, he just planted it. Then you can go and wait. Quote, and Fan said indifferently, and just when he wanted to smash Akainu's head with one blow, the hull of the ship shook suddenly, as if it had been hit by something. What's going on? Shouted the pirates and the navy, a little in dismay. Ha! And Fan's movements were slightly relieved, and his brows furrowed. At this moment, hundreds of figures suddenly jumped out of the sea, dressed very strangely, all dressed in black. And these people, with a strong crossbow on their waists, a strong bow on their backs, and spears in their hands, all aimed at Fan with killing intent. Their target seems to be Anfan. Woohoo! Quote, the strong crossbow was aimed directly at Fan, and countless arrows flew over. The weapons are actually made of Halu stone. Fan's eyes were sharp, and he found that the weapons of these people were all dark blue, revealing an aura of the ocean, and he hurriedly slammed his feet, jumped in the air, and retreated. Hundreds of people went straight together and came to Akainu's side. A middle-aged man who took the lead asked Akainu, Lieutenant General Akainu, are you okay? Quote, you almost shot me, Akainu said angrily. Just now a crossbow arrow slashed in front of him, with that kind of fierce rate of fire, coupled with the characteristics of the sea-building stone, inserted into his vital point, it could directly kill him. Who are you? Fan landed in a clearing in the distance, and when he saw these people saving Akainu, his brows suddenly furrowed, and he said coldly. Ha! Fan's eyes narrowed slightly, and his eyes widened in the next second, and he was a little surprised. It's actually the assassination team of the Robert Draconian family. Ha! The middle-aged man's eyes widened when he heard this, and he turned his head slightly and shouted, everyone thinks about emptiness, this little beast has the ability of the soul fruit, and he will detect the heart. Quote, suddenly, all the thoughts of the assassination team were empty, very neat and serious. There is no doubt that this is the private soldier of the Robert Draco family, and he has a strong fighting power. As a noble family of people in the world, each family will definitely raise some private soldiers to protect the interests of the family. Hundreds of years have passed, and the private soldiers of various families have become so terrifying that even the world government cannot ignore their existence. Just rush this group of people, the strength is in the army, at least they are all major generals, and the middle-aged men who take the lead are even more powerful, at least more powerful than lieutenant generals. Our reinforcements have arrived. When the navy saw these people, they thought they were sent by the world government, and they were overjoyed, their morale was quite uplifted, and the knife in their hands swung faster, as if they had taken a stimulant. Fan squinted at these assassination squads and said coldly, you were sent by my so-called relatives. Presumptuous, you are not qualified to say that you are a member of the Robert family. You little brute, you have ruined the reputation of the Robert family, and the patriarch has an order to bring your head back. Quote, a tall assassin squad member stepped forward and snapped. Take my head back, I'm afraid you'll keep your head. Fan said bloodthirsty, he can even defeat a character like Akainu, a bunch of garbage, and want to cut off his head, isn't it too much of a joke? The Tianlong family is finally going to make a move against him, I hope not to disappoint him, only the more ruthless you are, the more excited I am, the greater the hatred, and when the time comes, I will kill your entire clan, and then I can open up. HMPH, don't you know if you can kill it or not? The middle-aged man snorted coldly. They had already investigated Fan's strength before they came, and with a sharp weapon like Halu stone in hand, if this little beast didn't die, they could cut themselves. Kill him for me, and then break his body into pieces. Akainu said angrily, he was almost killed just now. Vice Admiral Akainu, with your injuries, let's go back to the Navy headquarters first. The Navy headquarters has issued an order to forcibly recall. One of the assassins said lightly to Akainu. Akainu was stunned when he heard this, then glanced at the assassin team member in annoyance, and then at Fan fiercely. And Fan, I am defeated by your conspiracy this time, and next time, I will definitely want your head to be twisted off. Akainu said angrily. As soon as these words came out, the assassination team members around them couldn't help frowning. Next time, what does this mean? Do you think we can't kill this and Fan? Of course, Akainu had this kind of thought in his heart, although these ordinary assassination team members all had the strength of the major general level, and the leading guy was close to the general level, and he had a sharp weapon like Halu Stone in his hand, but he didn't think that these guys could kill Fan. Even he can't do it. What qualifications do you group of celestial dragon lackeys have? And Fan's face was gloomy and he watched Akainu being taken away by a few assassination team members, but he couldn't move a step. It was very simple, except for those assassination team members, everyone else was staring at him. As soon as he makes any moves, it will be a thunderous blow. What's your name? And Fan asked the middle-aged man with an indifferent face. The middle-aged man snorted coldly and said, I don't have a name, my code name is No. 15. Quote. No. 15. And Fan was stunned for a moment, then read it carefully 3 times, and a trace of violence flashed in his eyes. It's really a good codename. It's really good that it's the 15th today. Why don't you die here today? And Fan sneered cruelly. This guy appeared, so that the wild dog of the red dog survived. The next time he killed this guy, it will be a little troublesome. This stirring stick will definitely smash him to pieces. Not only that, but these so-called hundreds of people were also killed. And Fan was extremely murderous in his heart. Today is where you die. 15th said coldly. You take all those pirates, and I will deal with them. Quote. A command shouted. The assassination team immediately wound their crossbows in unison, drew their bows full, and aimed at their targets. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sky was densely packed, and all the locust-like arrows shot towards the pirates, and they didn't care if they would attack the navy. Ah, how are you attacking me? We're the navy. Ah. One of the navies looked at the bleeding heart in disbelief, just as a bow and arrow pierced his heart. Bang! Quote. The navy fell in a pool of blood, staring at the assassins with wide eyes. Why? It's not good. Everyone hide. They're not from the world government. A navy officer, covered in blood, shouted, looking viciously at the death squads. Phew. Quote. At that moment, a crossbow arrow passed through his neck. Seeing this scene with cold eyes, and Fan smiled lightly, laughing a little inexplicably, with mockery, disdain, and amusement. They all died to kill you wicked men. Number 15 looked at Fan with an indifferent expression and said, their deaths are all because of you. Quote. Hearing this, Fan laughed again, full of evil and sarcastic smiles. He really wanted to be a fool and set up a chaste archway. But since he was given a hat, let's talk about it again. And Fan showed a sly smile, and he suddenly shouted, did you hear what he said just now? Did you hear what he said just now? You are nothing in their eyes. They think that even if you were killed by mistake, it is all for the sake of killing us, and everything is worth it. Look, your life is so despicable. This is the justice that the world government thinks, and this is the justice that you have always adhered to. Quote. And Fan's words were full of mockery, and his voice spread almost throughout the battlefield, and all the navy who were hiding heard it, and they all shook their hearts. 000 Hearing this, No 15's face changed wildly in an instant. This little beast used his psychic ability. He wanted to rebel against these navies. No, he must not let him succeed. And Fan ignored it, glanced at the 15th with disdain, and then continued, do you know? We are not pirates at all. Have you seen our flag? There are no skulls. Our Sha Wu Revolutionary Army is to overthrow the world government and establish a new world order. Why are there so many crimes and injustices in this world, and they can't be cleaned up? Slave trade, government corruption, and some armies actually oppress our people and ordinary people. Aren't we here to protect them? Why oppress them? And the nobles who are high, why should we kneel down and worship them? Everyone has a head, 2 legs and 2 arms. They have that great thing. Quote. All the navies were gradually stunned when they heard this. Yes. Why is there a slave trade in the world? Why do you have to kneel when you see the nobles? Why is it that the evil in the world is always cleaned up? Shut up. Quote. The 15th roared angrily, and this guy could still talk about it. Maybe the navy here really defected. Underscore. Shout. 15 grabbed a spear and stared at Fan fiercely, and the spear in his hand was thrown at a rapid pace, with the sound of a howling storm, until it was inserted into Fan's heart. HMPH. Quote. His words were interrupted, and Fan smiled coldly. Was he scared? Looking at the spear that flew in, and Fan snorted coldly, and the second-generation ghost in his hand slashed out, and the terrifying red light penetrated the spear and forcibly cut it in half. Although the Halu stone is very hard and comparable to masonry, it is not difficult for him to destroy it at all. Whoa! At this moment, dozens of crossbow arrows flew out, like dozens of flashes of light. Look for death. And Fan's eyes widened, and his 5 fingers grasped the void shook, and dozens of crossbow arrows collapsed instantly, turning into several pieces and falling to the ground. Is it the ability of the shock fruit? Said 15, a little shocked. You trash, you want to sneak up on me. Quote. And Fan smiled coldly, and his right hand burned with magma arm and slammed out, blasting towards the assassination team that attacked him. Boom! The magma arm exploded, and the magma flew around. In an instant, the assassins were contaminated with magma, and suddenly a terrible howl sounded, and the terrifying high temperature directly corroded their flesh, revealing the snow-white and terrifying bones, and then slowly turned black and corroded. The scene was terrifying and bloody. Little brute, you. Number 15 looked at Fan angrily. These people didn't know how much money and time it took to cultivate, and when the capital was earned, they were disposed of like garbage. What? If you are allowed to kill us, will I not be allowed to kill you? Fan said coldly. Good, good. Quote. 15 laughed angrily, and a purple liquid suddenly appeared in his right hand, emitting a foul smell, very pungent. Fan frowned, and said with some surprise, this is a poisonous fruit. Yes, little brute, I thank you for killing Magellan, otherwise you would have eaten such a good fruit. If you kneel down and cut yourself, I promise that you will not be killed by all of them, otherwise I will turn you into a bunch of toxins. That Magellan stupid, the poisonous fruit has such a strong ability, and it will be killed by you. I really don't know what he eats. Number 15 said in a cruel voice, this fruit was given to him by his master. After he ate this fruit, his strength exploded several times. It was like a day. He couldn't understand, how could Magellan, who had such a strong fruit, die in the hands of Fan? Kneel down and cut yourself. You're sick in the head, right? Magellan is a fool, what a joke. Quote. Fan sneered, as a boss in the original book, I don't know how many times stronger than you. He lost to him, it was because of Magellan's negligence, and he was directly lost in seconds. If you are stubborn, then you will go, the 15th hideous book said. The warship that advanced the city last time did not kill you, and this time it must kill you. Quote. After speaking, purple venom erupted from all over his body, and the strong venom directly dissolved the pillar behind him. Hearing this, Fan's heart was shocked. The last time he entered the city, it was this guy who harmed him, and in an instant, his eyes looked at number 15 violently. If he didn't have the power of mind at that time, he wouldn't be now. This guy has to die. It's not bad, but it's a pity you met me. Fan looked indifferently. What is Venom afraid of? Flame. He has the magma fruit ability, he will be afraid of venom. HMPH, wait a minute, clean up and get rid of these guys first. Quote. Fan looked angrily at the assassins. How could he tolerate them wantonly slaughtering his own men? Although his current subordinates all have crimes, and it is not a pity to die, how can he die all at once and become the commander of the light pole? It took half a month anyway. Without hesitation, Fan did what he said, and as soon as he raised his hand, the stone crossbow arrows that shot out of Halu were all suspended out of thin air, and each of these crossbow arrows was running strongly and at high speed, and the scarlet blood on it exuded bursts of resentment and anger. Kill. Quote. Fan snorted coldly, waved his hand, and all the crossbow arrows were aimed at those assassination team members. Puff. Some of the assassination team members did not react, and were brutally shot directly by their own blood-colored murderous crossbow arrows. At the same time, Fan's figure also pounced, moving like a rabbit, raising his knife to attack and kill those assassination team members. For the 15th seems to be ignored. He was left with a look of astonishment. At this time, Fan's murderous heart was fierce, his eyes were hateful. These lackeys of the Tianlongren family, come and kill one by one, kill 2 pairs when they come, and kill more and more when they come. Draconian. To die for them is to be conscious. As soon as Fan came up, in addition to using the second-generation Ghost Che, he still used his mental power to control the crossbow arrow steel knife, as long as he could kill people, he would control them all. Suddenly, Fan was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, and raised the butcher knife frantically. Kill, kill, kill. Puff. PS's. Boom. The sound of blood entering the flesh. The assassination team was like a grasshopper in front of Fan, and he died when he pressed it, he was so powerless. And after his death, Fan used magma to destroy their corpses, which was extremely frenzied, and no one knew why he did it. One of the assassination team members, at least at the level of a lieutenant general, used the Navy's 6-style iron block to attack Fan with one punch, but was beaten into a bloody mist by Fan's sneering ordinary punch. He let out a terrible howl. Immediately after that, it was not over, and Fan directly screwed off his head. In less than a while, more than 30 people died in the hands of Fan. 0. The 15th watched his men scream again and again, and one by one the elite subordinates were wiped out, and his eyes were bloodshot. Although there are many similar assassination squads in the family, these are all cultivated by the Robert family for more than 10 years, and they have grown up cruelly from childhood to adulthood, and one of the 10 people survived in the end, and it is conceivable that those who remain are the elite, coupled with the strict regulations of the world government that can only train a maximum of 1,000 children per year. So many people died at once. How can he see the master when he goes back? The master will definitely not spare him. Little brute, I'm going to tear you to pieces. Quote. Number 15 roared angrily, and directly slashed towards Fan, condensing into a series of highly poisonous knife shapes, and directly slashed through with thunderbolts. Everywhere I passed, there was a purple poison in the air, and it seemed that one breath could kill people. Poison knife. Quote. The poisonous knife approached Fan, immediately held his breath, closed his eyes, dodged sideways, and the poisonous knife slashed past him. This poisonous knife is highly poisonous, and when it takes a breath or enters the eyes, the toxin will flow into the blood, and finally enter the heart, which can kill people in a minute. Of course, if Fan was willing, he could break this trick, but he used it a lot. There are some things that thunder strikes best. After the poison knife was dodged by Fan, it flew to a naval soldier behind. This naval soldier was very unfortunate to be hit. His whole body was covered with purple venom, and his body exuded white mist, and he fell to the ground struggling and screaming. His voice was high to the bottom, and finally silent, and the time was just 1 minute. Die. An assassin team member held a steel knife and killed him in anger, and the sound of the knife was whirring, as if a beast could be split in half here. Garbage. Quote. Fan's expression was indifferent. He didn't look at the knife that was chopped at all. He grabbed and slapped the palm of his hand, and the steel knife was almost like tofu under his palm, and it was actually shot into a mess in an instant, which was very fragile. Poof. The assassin team member was shocked by the power of the shock fruit transmitted from the knife, and he vomited blood, shattered the bones and internal organs of his body, and fell to the ground and died. Fan jumped on both feet and slashed at some of the other assassins. There seemed to be a strange vibration in his palms, which was not visible to the naked eye, and once he touched it, the whole person would be directly slapped to death, shattering the internal organs and bones, which was extremely terrifying. Number 15 watched Fan continue to kill his subordinates and destroy the corpses with magma. He could see that he was full of anger. He intervened to stop it, but Fan's speed was too fast. He originally wanted to follow Fan's example. If you kill my subordinates, then I will kill your subordinates and complain, but this is just for thought. These garbage pirates have their subordinates in gold. Do you dare to target me? In a hurry, number 15 lost his mind and shouted angrily. Fan glanced away with cold eyes, and when he saw that the poison around him disappeared, he slapped his palm towards number 15 without hesitation. As you wish. Number 15 was shocked. Facing Fan, there was no way to dodge, and he was bombarded by this palm in Shang's mouth, screamed, and the whole person directly smashed the deck, layer by layer, and fell deep into the bottom of the Navy warship. Captain. Quote. The assassins who came from the siege were all shocked. Come on, let me kill you all together, and then devour and transform you. You are the best way for me to quickly forge a master for the first empire of Sha Wu. Quote. Fan said coldly, that's right. He killed these people mainly to devour them, but for the sake of the big plan, he didn't choose to devour them himself. but he wanted to wipe out these people, turn these people's energy into energy, and then give it to those who are loyal to him, so that they can quickly have strong combat power and become the backbone or core. Only in this way can the first empire of Sha Wu be truly formed. However, in order to bury the unique ability of the infinite fruit, after Anfan killed it, he used the magma ability while devouring and transforming, and illuminated it into an illusion of being destroyed and destroyed. However, in the hearts of some people, this is very immoral. But will Anfan care about this? Those who achieve great things should not be informal. Anfan struck with both hands, rushed at one of the assassins, and began to quickly run over them. Each one is a one-hit kill, followed by devouring and transforming, and at the same time, the magma ability. Watching Anfan's slaughter, all the navies were stunned and stupid. How is that possible? I read that right. Quote, "This son of sin is so powerful. All of these people were killed in one blow. Are these guys a group of useless people? I know how strong these guys are. They just shot at us, and killed us with one move, and their strength is at least equivalent to our Major General." Quote, "Yes, these guys can also Navy 6, these advanced skills that only the elite learn, but why do they feel so vulnerable when they use me? Is this my delusion?" The pirates watched Anfan be majestic here, and they were ecstatic. Just now these guys slaughtered them like killing an ant, and now the feng shui is turning, and they are slaughtered as garbage by their leader, and they also help them take revenge and directly destroy their corpses. The leader is really good to them. Long live the leader. The leader is invincible. Quote, "When people have faith in another person, it's very scary, and they think that everything they do is right, whether it's good or bad, because they think it's for them, and this horror makes them blind in their hearts, and they worship it more and more. Little brute, you." An angry roar roared wildly. Boom! A huge purple viper came out of the bricks of the ship, as if it had eyes, and pounced frantically at Anfan. This poisonous snake, full of poisonous gas, contains a very terrible amount of poison. If this poisonous snake explodes, at sea, it can make the sea 100 miles area become a poisonous area, on land, can make 10 miles of land a death area, and even the ground soil can corrode purple bubbles. Little brute, how do you think you can resist now? Number 15 jumped out of the bottom of the warship covered in blood, looking at Anfan with a gloomy face. Just now he seized the opportunity and attacked Anfan. Anfan just broke the neck of an assassination team, and his head slowly flicked. Just then, the viper pounced. Boom! Anfan stood there and became a piece of viscous venom, bubbling with purple bubbles, as if it were piping hot. All the navy stared blankly. Is that son of sin dead? And the pirates stared stunned, with cold sweat on their foreheads. Is the leader dead? No, he is not dead. He is invincible. Little brute, how do you think you can resist now? Number 15 jumped out of the bottom of the warship covered in blood, looking at Anfan with a gloomy face. Just now he seized the opportunity and attacked Anfan. Anfan just broke the neck of an assassination team, and his head slowly flicked. Just then, the viper pounced. Boom! Anfan stood in that place and became a thick piece of venom, bubbling as if it were hot. All the navy stared blankly. Is that son of sin dead? And the pirates stared stunned, with cold sweat on their foreheads. Is the leader dead? No, he is not dead. He is invincible. Ha ha, little brute, I've finally killed you, and you'll be nothing later. Number 15 smirked and said, what else is the copy fruit, the first fruit against the sky? Garbage. Oh no, hold your breath. The navy suddenly saw that those viscous venom spread a purple mist, rolling waves, like a purple cloud expanding around. No need to guess, there must be a huge poison in it. Shouted and exclaimed, but after a while, these poisonous gases spread too fast, and there was a sea breeze, and those poisonous gases invaded into the navy and the pirate group, and one by one the naval pirates fell directly, and in an instant, hundreds of people were poisoned to the ground, moaning in pain, foaming at the mouth, and the poisonous gas attacked the heart in an instant. The closer you get, the more people die, and only the farther away you don't have an accident, but it's about the same. Because these poisonous gases seem to be artificially controlled. You're so cruel. Even the navy was poisoned. Quote, a voice came out of the tumbling poisonous gas. It was Anfan. On the 15th, when he saw that Anfan was safe and sound, he was shocked and angry. How could you really be under poison and nothing? Quote, want answers. Anfan smiled disdainfully. His mouth suddenly opened, the terrifying attraction emanated, and all the poisonous gases were quickly inhaled into his mouth like a whirlpool. Number 15 looked at Fan stupidly and was stunned. In a few seconds, the rich purple poisonous gas was all swallowed up, the smell of the sea breeze was diffused in the air, and countless corpses foaming at the mouth lay on the deck. Fan took a break, and then covered his stomach, as if he had eaten a good meal. Number 15 stared blankly. What's going on? Idiot. Quote. Looking at No 15's stunned appearance, he touched the corner of his mouth with his fingers, and rubbed out red-black magma. He is now magmatic elementalized, so there is no need to be afraid of poisonous gas, and there is no need to be afraid of poisonous gas. He just inhaled the poisonous gas, used telekinesis to attract, and the magma destroyed these poisonous gases. Of course he didn't want the poisonous gas to kill the Navy and his pirates, because he was very useful, and a plan appeared in his heart. Poor No. 15, I guess I was stunned by Fan's powerful move. I never thought it would be like this. I've killed all of your people, and now it's your turn. Fan looked at Number 15 with a cold gaze. His eyes were indifferent, like looking at a dead person. You came here to ruin my good deeds of killing Akainu, and you killed so many of us, you deserve to die. Fan said coldly. Phew. Before his words fell, Fan rushed over, like a terrifying sea king impact, and everything around him was shattered. Poison, absolute poison armor. This 15th gritted his teeth and fought hard. Come on, little brute. 15 roared wildly. This was the strongest defense he had ever studied, and there was no place to die at close range. With a loud shout, the purple poison on the body bubbled up, and it actually condensed into a thick layer of purple poison armor outside the body. This poison armor is all highly poisonous, and the difference is that this one will die if you touch it, and you will die of poison. Fan looked at it with a sneering smile. This idiot, doesn't he know that the poison is restrained by the high temperature? Absolute poison armor. Absolute defense. Litter. What a joke. Boom. The burning magma kicked 15 with a click, click, click. The purple poison armor directly disintegrated, and at a high temperature of more than 1000 degrees, it directly melted away the so-called absolute defense poison armor of Number 15, and the whole person kicked directly into the air. Boom. 15 crashed into the cabin, shattering bones and bleeding internal organs in several places. Fan held a Halu stone spear in his hand, and the magma ability made the spear red, emitting flames, like a burning spear. Seeing Fan coming over with murderous intent, Number 15 said in horror, You can't kill me, you kill me, the master won't let you go, he won't let you go. How powerful is our celestial dragon clan? If you kill me, you will not die a good death, and you will be retaliated by your master. Quote. 000. In the face of death, he is now afraid. You dare to threaten me. Don't worry, Ronnie Saint will also accompany you. New hatred and old hatred, I must have accumulated a lot. Fan looked at Number 15 with a twisted face, his eyes full of violence. Ronnie Shang, his so-called Draco, father. Number 15 looked at Fan blankly. How did he know the name of his master? Immediately, 15 seemed to think of something, his eyes widened, and he exclaimed, Psychic ability. Remembered, Fan said with a sneer, clenching the flaming spear. Poof. Quote. Blood sores. How is that possible? That's all. Dead. I can't. Seeing the burning spear plunged into his body and into his heart, 15 looked incredulous. The lackeys of the Tianlong people, the warship in the city killed me, destroyed my good deeds of killing the red dog, and killed so many of me, the 4 major crimes, I sentence you, you have no corpse. Quote. Fan said coldly, so you go to hell. Quote. Fan let go of the flaming spear, and the burning magma kicked the head of the 15th to pieces, and the brain flowed to the ground. Underscore. Quote. Allegiance to the great first empire of Sha Wu. Allegiance to the leader. Erase the sins that lie ahead. Building a new world order. Swear by your soul. Fan stood on the top layer of the ship's armor, indifferently looked at the humiliation below and knelt on the ground, and forced the naval soldiers to follow the concept of Sha Wuism. Long live the first empire of Natsu. Long live the first empire of Natsu. Long live the leader. Long live the leader. As the pirates around him shouted the last sentence with red faces, the Navy soldiers were successfully brainwashed. Seeing them shouting emotionally, a smile appeared on the corner of Anfan's mouth. There are only 5,000 pirates left, and only 1,000 of the thousands of navies left, and all of them are captured, and the difference between the regular army and the bandits can be seen from this casualty ratio, although the pirates of the New World are also very vicious, but the navy that has been stationed here for many years is more powerful, especially they are well trained, and the overall strength is more terrifying. With such a group of regular troops, he can use these people to continuously train the army out, and those pirate straw bales that were forcibly gathered below by Anfan can finally be officially called the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army after training. Before that, though, Anfan had to deal with something, because he found that some of these people were not assimilated because they did not open their hearts to be baptized. Diehards of the World Government Navy. Anfan chuckled lightly as he looked at some of them in the fanatical eyes below. Give you a way to live, you don't want to go, just die. Quote. Anfan sneered and said indifferently, with a wave of his hand, the naval soldiers kneeling on the ground suddenly stood up, very neatly and quickly, as if they were premeditated, but some of these soldiers reacted a little slowly, and they suddenly stood up and stunned for the people around them, and then quickly stood up. It is clear that these naval soldiers were not baptized and were diehards. What about the diehards? Kill them all. Quote. Anfan put his hand behind his back, turned around and left, and said indifferently, there are at least hundreds of people, kill them all, he doesn't lack that number of people. As soon as the words came out of their mouths, before the men could react in shock, their former comrades in arms suddenly grabbed them like tigers and wolves, and pressed them to death on the deck. What are you doing? We are all in the Navy. We are comrades in arms, what are you doing? Ah, h. Poof. The sticky black coagulated blood on the deck ushered in fresh life again, and was once again painted bright red, like bright red roses. You, give it all to me. Quote. Anfan doesn't seem to be the same to the slaughterhouse below, he doesn't seem to be the same to the pirates, the navy. No, some people in the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army pointed at them and asked them to stand up. Leader. Quote. Nearly 100 people stood up from among the thousands, all of them navy, and came to Anfan's bottom, standing straight as a pine, and gave Anfan a salute. You eat it, these things can give you the strength of a major general. A huge blue energy pill appeared in Anfan's hand, exuding an astonishing and terrifying aura, which made people can't help but tremble. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be moved, and for a while, countless envy and jealousy gathered on those 100 people, and those 100 people were also very excited. Long live the leader. Quote. Seeing that the huge energy pill was divided into 100 small pills and automatically flew into the palm of their hands, they immediately let out a wild shout, and then quickly swallowed it, as if they were afraid of being robbed by others. After a while, the spirit of these hundreds of people also underwent a huge change, the whole body gradually underwent amazing changes, the eyes were shining, the body exuded more and more powerful chi and blood breath, the strong muscles seemed to be full of gas, the arms were green and hideous, and the whole person seemed to hide huge power. Looking at the amazing changes in these people, a smile appeared on the corner of Anfan's mouth. Although these people instantly possessed the strength of the level of a major general, they also paid a great price, that is, it was impossible to survive further by training themselves in the future. Because there is no one else except Anfan who can instantly absorb the energy transformed by the infinite fruit-devouring ability. As for why they can absorb it instantly, it is Anfan who did something to let them absorb it quickly, in order to quickly build a strong backbone team. After all, no matter how strong a person is, the strength is limited after all. He wants to overthrow the world government and replace it. How can one be enough? Even if it works, is a one-man government still a government? However, Anfan's doing so can be said to have created them and ruined them. The strength of the major general level is estimated to be less than 10,000 people in the world, and how many people in the world can reach the level of major general, but although it is very fast, their way forward has also been destroyed, and their foundation has been forcibly destroyed by these energies. Just like a ditch, it can only flow so much water. If you insist on letting it flow into a big river, the guards on both sides will of course be destroyed directly. So it made them and destroyed them. However, if Anfan is willing to give them more powerful energy pills, their strength will still improve, but the apex is at most the strength of the lieutenant general. Thank you, leader. These hundreds of people fell to their knees and looked at Anfan feverishly and shouted. The power in their bodies that was like the Yangtze River made them intoxicated. Is this what it feels like? You will be the captain of the Shawu army in the future. Each person will bring 50 people, and 50 people will be a team. Yes. Quote. And Fan's gaze suddenly looked at the majestic and sturdy naval fortress. Navy G1 Branch Fortress. Quote. What if I take him down now in this original book for the future naval headquarters? How about making my own Shawu base camp? And Fan muttered, his eyes narrowed slightly, looking at the naval fortress of the G1 branch, and an inexplicable excitement gradually appeared in his eyes. Someone. Leader. Quote. You guys give me to break through this naval branch G1 branch fortress, it will be the headquarters of our Shawu First Empire from now on, and from today on, our Shawu First Empire will completely ignite the worlds. And Fan said with cold eyes. Underscore. Navy G1 branch fortress. I don't know that the pirate is so bold that he dares to challenge our naval powerhouse, it's really boring. Quote. Yes, there is Lieutenant General Akainu out of the horse. These people are dead, and I don't know how many pirates will be escorted back to the branch fortress later. Quote. There must be a lot. You must know that Vice Admiral Akainu is the most capable person of the natural system, and the future is the future of the Navy. Quote. Some of the naval soldiers in the fortress grinned at each other, their tones were full of lightness, and when they spoke of Akainu, their eyes revealed adoration, which was the worship of the mentally retarded to the strong. A handsome girl in a navy trench coat with pink hair walked slowly with a cigarette in her mouth and a face full of unhappiness. This Akainu won't let me go. The heroic girl said angrily in her heart. What kind of bullshit is that women should not go to the battlefield? The battlefield is a man's business, what kind of bullshit is this? Akainu, you don't look down on us women. The heroic girl thought badly in her heart. The more she thought about it, the more upset she became. She came here to kill the enemy for the Naval Military Academy test. If this continues, how will she graduate from the Naval Academy? Akainu, so arrogant, looking down on women, cursing you to meet a strong opponent and return with your wings. The more the heroic girl thought about it, the more angry she became, and she cursed fiercely in her heart. Of course, she knew that this was just a casual thought. Akainu was so strong, there were few people who could defeat him in the new world, and she was simply venting her grievances. It's just that what this heroic girl didn't expect was that this curse really worked. Lieutenant General Akainu is back, they're back. With a loud shout, the sailors rushed to the harbor to see how much trophy they had brought back with Vice Admiral Akainu. Blue warships slowly entered the G8 fortress with a large number of pirate ships. Lieutenant General Akainu, how many prisoners have you captured this time? The Navy soldier shouted excitedly and curiously. Caught a lot. Quote. There was a sinister laugh from the naval warship that gradually anchored the harbor, and then several figures suddenly jumped down, and a huge head with a smile on its face flew up. The rushing blood pierced his eyes, and the smiles of all the naval soldiers instantly froze. Kill. The man also dressed in navy clothes swung a butcher's knife at them, and the corners of his mouth smeared with bloodthirsty madness. What are you doing? We're all in the Navy. Poof. Ignoring the shouts of these people, they just took steel knives and desperately slaughtered these stunned naval soldiers. They're not the Navy, they're pirates. Quote. A loud shout rang out, and the Major General shouted angrily on an iron bridge in the fortress. All the Navy soldiers were a little incredulous, pretending to be Vice Admiral Akainu defeated. How could this be? Vice Admiral Akainu was invincible, how could he be defeated? But the scarlet blood around them, and they all had to believe that Lieutenant General Akainu might really be defeated, otherwise how could these pirates kill in? Everyone, run, go back and get weapons, we're no match for them at all. A naval officer shouted with bloodshot eyes. Finger guns. Quote. Phew. A transparent force like a meteor, with a sharp sound of rapid whistling, flew towards the naval officer's forehead, and in an instant, the naval officer's forehead was pierced, and the terrifying power directly hit the hard concrete wall behind, leaving a hole like a crater. A Shawu army commander looked at the fallen naval officer with a cold gaze. In the absorbed energy pill, there was a memory of the Navy 6 forms, and as soon as they absorbed it, they would use this Navy 6 forms. Quick, run. If you don't escape, you'll die. All the naval soldiers woke up from a dream and turned around to escape, but would the Shawu Revolutionary Army let them escape? The leader has an order, kneel down and surrender to avoid death. The commander of the Shawu army shouted. But the Navy soldiers didn't listen to him at all. they just ran away desperately, as if they wanted to take their weapons as the naval officer had just said. If you don't surrender, you will be killed. Quote, kill me, into the fortress city, and don't let them use the heavy artillery in the fortress. Quote, thousands of Sha Wujun quickly attacked the fortress city, and when they entered the interior, they chased after the naval soldiers and killed them, and they were all killed with red eyes. Except for kneeling and surrendering, everything else was treated bloodily. And Fan slowly followed behind the large army alone, passing through the ground full of blurred flesh and blood, and the air was filled with a strong smell of blood. When Fan walked step by step towards the fortress command office, his footsteps suddenly leaked, as if he sensed something. 000. And Fan looked at a corpse on the ground, looked at his stomach that was breathing up and down, and the corners of his mouth were drawn to reveal an inexplicable smile. How boring it is to pretend to be dead. Why don't you just kneel down and surrender? And Fan sighed, and without waiting for the corpse to react, he stomped on his mouth fiercely. Poof. Quote, blood mixed with broken internal organs spurted out directly from the corpse, and he looked at Fan with wide eyes in disbelief, and then he really turned into a corpse. Look at the corpses in the ground, who else is pretending to be dead? Give them a chance to live, and they won't give in like this. So loyal, then go to hell to be loyal to the world government. Quote, and Fan snorted coldly at the soldiers of the Sha Wu army who were guarding the surrendered naval soldiers beside him. It's really sloppy, if there is a problem next time, cut it yourself. Quote, yes, a captain nodded. With a wave of his hand, some Sha Wujun soldiers began to check whether the corpse had become a corpse or not, and the way to check it was very simple, and Fan had set an example before. You guys. At this moment, a voice full of anger came. And Fan frowned. How come there is still a navy that is not dead? Looking up, his cold expression immediately leaked, and he immediately shouted in disbelief. Tina, 9. A few days later, the Holy Land of Merry Joy. The storm landed here, thunderous lightning pierced the sky, and the whole Merry Joy was faintly filled with a depressing atmosphere. World Government Headquarters. The Navy G1 fortress was captured by the First Empire of Sha Wu. What is going on with this First Empire of Sha Wu? The 5 old stars, who had a scar on the left side of his face, looked at the urgent information handed over with a blue face, and shouted loudly. The white-robed 5 old stars were full of gloom on their faces, and said coldly, this little brute has actually formed a force, and the army is still called the Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. Is he preparing to overthrow the world government? What a bold man. Do you really think we dare not kill him? I thought that he would keep to himself for a few years, and silently grow his strength under the protection of the white beard, but I didn't expect that he would make such a fuss, dare to form a revolutionary army, and capture the fortress of the New World town of the Navy headquarters, and even, 000, and then he took it. What is this red dog doing? And there are problems again and again. The bald 5-star said angrily. They all received the revolutionary declaration of the First Sha Wu Empire from the New World, which spread all over the world, otherwise they didn't know that the G1 branch of the World Government Navy in the New World was actually captured by the First Sha Wu Empire established by Anfan. Especially when they saw the declaration issued by the First Empire of Sha Wu, as the world's top decision makers, they could clearly see how much demagoguery there was behind this. Especially when they listed the many crimes of the world government, they made them shudder a little, and they simply pointed to the most vulnerable place of the world government. Dorig's revolutionary army has never scared them, even if the overthrow of some countries is just a small fight in their eyes. Some things are not just by force, otherwise the world government has been overthrown by some guys I don't know how many times. You must know that the power left by the country of D is even more terrifying. However, the Sha Wu First Empire established by Anfan, especially the Sha Wu revolutionism that was published, made them really feel a huge threat. This Sha Wu First Empire must not be kept. Order the naval government, send the highest combat power, within a month must destroy this Sha Wu First Empire, kill Anfan, kill everyone, those navies who betrayed the world government, all killed. In addition, the Sha Wu doctrine of the Sha Wu First Empire, ordinary people are guilty of it, and it must be blocked no matter what. And it must not be spread. Quote, Draco aristocratic region. This evil beast is actually so powerful here. In the dark room, a middle-aged man sat on his red gem-encrusted sofa chair, his bright eyes looking at a piece of information in his hand, and his tone was a little surprised and angry. Boom! A thunderbolt pierced the sky, and lightning rays streamed in through the window, illuminating the middle-aged man's face. This middle-aged man's face is somewhat similar to an fan. Number 15 is really a straw bale, a bunch of waste. It's in vain that I've cultivated them for so many years. A bunch of garbage that can't be regretted to die. Quote. Naval Headquarters, Marin Vando. Conference Room. More than 300 major generals, more than 10 lieutenant generals, and a marshal held a meeting together, and the entire conference room was filled with a solemn and depressing atmosphere. Even Karp, who has always been hippie and smiling, has a serious face. The First Empire of Sha Wu has the audacity to openly capture our naval headquarters in the fortress of the New World, and also spread some rumors throughout the world in an attempt to overthrow the world government and undermine the stability of the world. Empty said with a serious face to the equally serious senior navy below. In this conference room, basically all the high-ranking naval officials above the rank of admiral came. And the person who fabricated this Sha Wu First Empire is none other than An Fan, who made our navy a disgrace back then, and offered a reward of 10 for the son of Sin. Quote. Hearing this, the red dog sitting below with bandages all over his body heard this. His face was a little distorted, his fists were clenched, and the whole person exuded a terrible anger. Anfin's little beast really didn't die. The 5 elders of the Star have ordered that our navy be stationed at the highest combat power to destroy the First Empire of Sha Wu, wipe out all the naval soldiers who betrayed the world government, and kill the sons of Sin without forgiveness. Sora looked at his subordinates and said coldly. Now I declare, by me, Senior General Z, Lieutenant General Karp, Lieutenant General Chingzi, Lieutenant General Yellow Ape. A total of 10 lieutenant generals, 130 rear admirals, 50,000 naval soldiers, and 80 large naval warships were recruited and killed by the First Empire of Anfin Sha Wu a week later. Quote. In addition, in order to prevent riots in some places, naval sub-bases all over the world must stop smoking, maintain the safety of the local government, and allow shooting and killing in the event of some riots. Sora said coldly. The above is the order of the 5 old stars, everyone carry out the order, this meeting ends here. Quote. Marshal, why not me? I'm going to get involved. At this moment, Akainu suddenly raised his hand and said angrily, how could he participate in the large-scale operation to kill Anfin, how could he be without him? Sora glanced at Akainu indifferently and said, your lungs and heart are damaged, you better stay in the Navy headquarters to recuperate. Quote. After saying that, he left, leaving behind a red dog with a blue face. Ha! The ruffian's face of the yellow ape smiled sarcastically. Listening to the sarcastic smile coming from beside him, Akainu had a hard time seeing the extreme on his face, and his hatred for An Fan became heavier and heavier. Somewhere in the desert, the wind was howling and the sand was rolling, barely making it impossible to hide your eyes. On a sandstone, a man in a black robe with a red tattoo on his face stood on it, looking ahead with an icy aura. In the man's hand, he was holding a large piece of paper that resembled a newspaper. Sha Wu First Empire, Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, Sha Wu Doctrine, the man muttered, and then gradually drew a wild laugh. Interesting. Another revolutionary army. Ha ha, this world is a little more exciting. Ha ha ha. An Fan captured some seagulls that were delivering newspapers, and flew all the Sha Wu revolutionary newspapers printed from the G1 branch to the rest of the world. The First Empire of Sha Wu. Anfin, World Town Government Guild, set up the nobility, noble slaves. Everyone is not equal, blatantly preempting things. Government corruption, the nobleman is not guilty of murder. Overthrow the world government, establish a new order, abolish the aristocracy, everyone is equal. The people call the shots. Exemption from agricultural tax, distribution of land, learn for free, enact the law, offenders will be prosecuted. For a time, Sha Wu's revolutionism shook the world, and it has only been a few years since the era of pirates opened, and a new era of revolution is about to begin. No matter how much of a sensation the world caused, at this time, as the first-hand director, the Zhongshiawu Revolutionary Army of the G1 branch of the Navy was still silent. Squeak. In a small dark room in the G1 branch of the Navy, Tina, who had been forcibly taken by female soldiers to take a bath, was escorted back in a white bathrobe, with a good smell all over her body, and her cheeks were slightly flushed under the warm water. It's a long bath. And Fan walked in and looked at Tina, who was forcibly cuffed to the stool, and said with a light smile. But after washing, there is no smell of blood and sweat on my body at all. Quote. HMPH. Quote. Tina snorted disdainfully and tilted her head to the side, as if she hadn't heard Anfin's words at all. And Fan didn't mind. He clasped his arms and said, "Are you interested in joining our Sha Wu Revolutionary Army? You are here, I can give you a captain." Quote. As soon as she finished speaking, Tina raised her little head, stared at Anfan and said angrily, "I will not join your Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. I am loyal to the Navy, loyal to the world government, and implement the will of world justice, not to follow you as a butcher." Quote. Speaking of the back, Tina's voice was visibly raised, full of anger. Butcher. And Fan laughed when he heard this, laughed a few times, and his tone was instantly full of indifference. I gave them a chance to surrender, I gave them 2 chances to live, and they didn't want to cherish it, so what should I do? Quote. And Fan did give them 2 chances, and the enemies they wanted to kill were given. The first time was to surrender, and the second time they were told to open their hearts to Sha Wu revolutionism. Once they missed it, there was no third chance, and they wanted to go to hell and continue to be a navy. If the person who said this in front of him was not Tina, but someone else, and Fan would probably dispose of it directly, and he would have dared to talk to him like this, and he would have personally invited you to join our Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. Of course, if the person in front of him was not Tina, he would not be qualified to sit here, but would be escorted to the square and directly executed. Butcher. And Fan pinched her pretty chin and said coldly, "Although our behavior is excessive, but to establish a new world order, the road below must be a piece of white bones. When the world government was established, I don't know how many people were killed, the 3 major weapons are in their hands, tell me how many people will die. If there are not many people who die, why is there 100 years of blank history? You can't imagine the crimes of the world government, you don't know that the bloody darkness of the 100 years is terrifying, little sister, do you know?" Quote. Tina's face turned red and looked at Anfan, and she didn't know whether she was angry or ashamed. "Ha." Quote. Anfan sneered and let go of Tina's pretty chin, looking her up and down, scanning the white bathrobe tightly wrapping her small figure that was a little bumpy at first. "The first beauty of the Navy, come to my Sha Wu Revolutionary Army as the second." And Fan said. "Second beauty." Tina froze. "Who's the first?" "Join my Sha Wu Revolutionary Army, and I'll tell you." Anfin blew hot air in Tina's ear and laughed evilly. Tina's earlobe felt the heat, and the lightning struck, and her face turned red, spreading all the way to the root of her ear. "Min, sense it, bit." And Fan chuckled, her fingertips lightly slicing her white ear hammer. You. Tina's face flushed, as if she was about to smoke. Bang. Quote. And Fan patted her shoulder with his palm and said lightly, "Don't worry, I won't touch you, because you are only in your teens, and I am almost 11 years old." Quote. Ha ha. After saying that, without waiting for Tina's reaction, she laughed wildly and turned to leave. "Give you 3 days, you have to think about it. If you don't agree after 3 days, this green fruit will stop here." When Anfan walked to the door, his expression suddenly became cold, and he turned his head slightly and said in a cold voice, which shocked Tina's heart. "Don't do anything verbally promised or anything. I have psychic power, control the mind. I originally wanted to control you directly, but then you are you, and it is not the arrogant and spicy girl Tina in my heart, so I give you a chance, think about it." Quote. Closed, a small dark house for 3 days, except for food and drink at a fixed point, no one in this vicinity can be noisy. Quote. Yes. Quote. Squeak. Quote. The door to the small dark room slammed shut, and a dark darkness fell into Tina's blank eyes. And Fan walked back to his office, which was the original Akainu office. Report. Quote. As soon as I was on the sofa chair, a bell rang out. "Come in." Quote. A Sha Wu Revolutionary Army commander walked in, saluted, and handed Anfan a document in his hand. Anfan didn't want to read the document first, but frowned and looked at the captain's navy clothes. "We are all Sha Wu Revolutionary Army. We must have a set of military uniforms neatly. Here is specially designed by me. You see that there is no clothing machine in the fortress, make it for me." Anfin took out a drawing and gave it to the captain. "It's all a revolutionary army, and they still wear navy clothes, what do they look like?" Yes. Quote. After the captain left, and Fan slowly opened the document, which contained a newspaper. Ha! The lazy and Fan's expression suddenly became serious, and he sat upright with his the body. Navy Headquarters, Dispatch Admiral Kong, Admiral Z, Vice Admiral Karp, Vice Admiral Chingzi, Vice Admiral Yellow Abe. A marshal, a general, 10 lieutenant generals, 130 major generals, 50,000 naval soldiers, and 80 large naval warships were to be conquest and slaughter the First Empire of Anfan Shawu a week later, and it was imperative that the son of Sin was brought to justice. Quote. And Fan looked at the newspaper with a cold face, his eyes narrowed slightly. When the Navy headquarters held a press conference, the words of Admiral Sora's murderous intent spread throughout the world. The whole world shook again, although I thought that the world government would send troops, but I didn't expect such a strong lineup. For a time, the quiet eyes of the whole world gathered on the fortress of the former G1 branch of the Navy, and gathered on the earth-shattering boy. The mountain rain is about to come and the wind is full of buildings, how will that boy deal with it? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.